It's that most wonderful time of the year. No, I am not referring to the upcoming festive holidays, but the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports presented by Tarmac Works Finals Day. My name is Paul Jeffrey. Alongside me is Ben Constanduris. And Ben, today's the day when all the action takes place.
Yeah, Paul, really excited to see how it all goes down. We didn't manage to seal any titles last time out, and so we have all four of our championships to decide at a track that they all know because they raced at the Charity Cup and we all love.
Fantastic stuff. And yes, 13 drivers can win our four championships. And Mr. David Addison, who we've got in voice but not in vision, Suzuka is a track pretty well known for championship deciders. We don't seem to actually have David on the comms at the moment, but we'll come back to him shortly. But Ben, back to the Suzuka circuit for a moment if I can. It's an incredible driver's challenge, but very difficult to overtake, and that's going to be an added element of jeopardy for our drivers, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a driver's circuit. Sometimes it's not necessarily a track for great racing because it's such a challenge just to get round, but plenty of mistakes, I'm sure, from our drivers. A really old school track, designed by the same guy that designed the original Zandvoort, and sinuous, has station changes. It's not particularly wide. And obviously there's a couple of those amazing corners like the 130R where you really have to brace yourself and hope that the car sticks and makes it through the corner.
Yeah, it's a fantastic track, a figure-of-8 circuit as well, so the circuit goes underneath another part of the track, and it's a venue that our drivers are familiar with. You indicated initially at the start of this broadcast, we did the one-off Charity Cup race at Suzuka, and many of the drivers that are taking part today have got experience in this sim against each other on that track. Is that going to give them an advantage? Is there anything they can take away from that they can use today?
We're in a very different position for our real world drivers than we were back when we raced the Charity Cup in August, I think it was, when a lot of the drivers from the pro category, the pro race drivers, had never really experienced sim racing before, were starting to find their feet, and so that was the Charity Cup was their first real opportunity to experience what sim racing is all about, how the car feels, and all the various processes that we have to go through. So I think the order that we saw then will be very different to what we saw now for the real world drivers. But for our sim pros, yes, familiarity. They've done the race before, especially with this pit stop that we throw into the mix, which isn't really for anything other than to add a strategic element and a bit of excitement for us. They will now know how to use that pit stop better to their advantage at Suzuka, which works best in terms of, you make that pit stop early, then you put yourself into traffic, and then you'll spend 50 minutes trying to get through that traffic. Or, like we've seen quite a few drivers do now, you wait really late in the race and make that pit stop right at the end.
Yep, fantastic. Strategy always plays an important role in these races. And this is the final round, so let's have a look at the sim driver standings to see where the points allocation spread is at this moment in time coming into this final race. As you can see, we have got a leader in the Sim Pro Am series. Philippa Bukida having a fabulous season so far. She's one of 7 drivers that can take away the championship title today at the conclusion of this race at Suzuka. But in the Sim drivers, it's split into 2 categories. So we've also got the Sim Pro, and in this championship things are a little bit tighter. It's really Andika Milana, our winner last time out, and Kim Long Lee that are in with championship contention. One of those drivers will take away the title at the end of this race. Of course, the AM drivers, Ben, can and often do get in the mix with the Pro as well. But it's just another element, is it, to look out for in the race. The Pro Championship, the Pro Sim, and the AM as well is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's not just a race today. We've got, obviously, who wins the race is still a very exciting thing to follow. But then we will be following all those different championship protagonists. As you say, in the Sim Am category, 7 different drivers having the ability to win that championship. Just 2 in the main category. And really, Maulana has one hand on that trophy already with a 19-point advantage over King Long Lee. But you never know what's going to happen. We've seen these guys who've looked like they were going to dominate the championship. A bad race. And this may be that race for Maulana. Obviously, he hopes not.
Yeah, Maulana winning the last 2 races. We're going to throw to an interview that we held with him a little bit earlier on. Okay, here we are once again with the ever-cheerful Ndika Maulana, winner in atrocious conditions last time out at Spa-Francorchamps. Hey, man. Ndika, you must be delighted getting a win in these terrible conditions.
Yes, first of all, thanks to the team, Legion of Racers, all my friends who helped me practice, and yes, it feels good, of course, to win in such rainy conditions. It was very, very tricky race for me because I need to think about especially the tire pressure and then the tire wear. I need to manage it for the 1 hours, and we are not. It's better for us to not change tires, so I need to do tire management really well. And I'm lucky. It's all turns well. All the practice paid off.
Fantastic! It was a great result. And last time we spoke, you wanted to end the championship strongly. 19 points in front. This is your championship now, surely.
For me, it's nothing sure in the race because everything can happen till everyone cross the finish line. So for next round, I'll just try my best to aim for maximum results to this round.
Yep. I mean, actually, talking of next round, do you have a strategy in place? Does it go for the win or consolidate?
Based on the points, as I already calculated points, the strategy. So I only need to finish P6 at least to get the title, but I think that's not my plan. My plan is without thinking too much, I just push everything I get and aim for victory.
Yep.
Hopefully.
Yep. And the last race is at the beautiful Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. How does that suit you as a driver in your car?
I'm not sure. I'm quite confident in my qualifying pace, but I'm not so sure with the race because the AMG is a car that's very sensitive to aero. And I think this Suzuka is very heavily dependent on the aero, so it looks like I need to make some compromise and adjustment for the race. But let's see.
Fantastic. And personally, how are you coping with the pressure and the stress of being the championship leader in such a great series heading into the last race?
Indeed, the pressure is there, but it's been like this since the first round because everyone here in the Sim Pro and Sim M are all the best in the region. So I think I just need to do what I already did in the past 4 rounds.
Yep, absolutely. So, Ndika Maulana, the winner of the last 2 races, thank you, sir, for joining us once again.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Great to speak to you. That's been Ndika Maulana, and now we'll go back to the studio.
Ta-da!
Fantastic stuff. Always cheers me up speaking to Ndika Maulana, a very, very enthusiastic member of the sim racing community. David Addison, you've seen 1 or 2 championship deciders in your time. Ndika's already indicated he needs a top 6. Is that a dangerous tactic to try and aim for a result, or is it just go hell for leather?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, he needs to keep out of trouble. He needs to bank the points. Some of the answer depends on what you do in qualifying. And what he's done is get himself onto the front row of the grid. So therefore, he's ahead of his main championship rival, Kin Long Lee. And he's also got the potential of making a good enough start to get him ahead of any problems. The worst thing really is to be in the traffic with cars all around you because you can't drive your race. You're totally at the mercy of what everybody else is up to. So Maulana on the front row is in the box seat pretty much. He's out-qualified his championship rival, so he's looking very, very strong indeed going into this last race. Should be another fascinating hour.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, David. And before we go to the track, let's have a quick look at the entry list from this final race for the Sim Pro Am drivers. Once again, we've got a fantastic selection of talent from around the Asia region. We've got a lot of names returning that we'll have seen in previous races, and of course drivers that have qualified to take part in this final round as well. Again, a lot of names there that you will recognise. It's great to see regions represented such as China, Japan, Korea, Australia, Hong Kong as well, amongst others. This is a packed grid of drivers, and just because we're saying Pro and Am, don't be confused with that being inexperienced or untalented drivers. The level of skill and speed, performance and preparation we've seen from these drivers so far this season has been absolutely fantastic, hasn't it, to see?
Yeah, absolutely. They really have kind of flown the flag for Asian esports over the last couple of months. Obviously, from European perspective, we don't get a chance to see these guys competing quite as much because of the time differences, but they really are on the world stage with this competition. This is by far the biggest competition that any of these drivers will have competed in, certainly on ACC, and really they've impressed me hugely.
Yep, been fantastic stuff. And now I think all the pre-talking is over and we can go to the circuit where today dreams will be made or broken, as I hand over to the commentary duo, the dynamic duo of Mr. Ben Constanduras and David Addison.
Paul, thank you very much. There is nothing quite like a championship showdown, and whether it's real or virtual, one thing is for sure, the pressure is very real indeed. As the formation lap gets underway then, it is Carl Peterson who is on pole position. Remember, he was the man that won our first championship round at Monza, and he's one of the AMs out of the Pro-Am combination of classes that you've got here. And Andika Maulana, the championship leader, lines up alongside him. He's our only double winner, of course, of the championship season, and he really is looking very strong indeed. Kelvin Chen is the man that lines up third on the grid, with Philippa Boquida lining up alongside. Now, we're talking about championships, Ben. Pro is a two-way fight, whereas in the AM competition, it could be a seven-way contest. Philippa Boquida heads the AM contest, and she's the best placed on that grid.
Andika Maulana was slightly wrong in his calculations. Thankfully, we have a mathematical genius in our press officer, Tom Hornsby, who has provided us with all the documentation we need to work out everything with regards to championship. And actually, because Maulana has taken 2 victories, if he finishes 7th with Kin Long Lee taking victory, because Maulana has had 2 victories and Long Lee will only have had 1, Maulana will win the championship. So actually, it's an easier job than even he thinks to make sure that he's down in 7th. King Long Lee, though, has to win.
Yeah, he does indeed, whereas you then start to worry about the battle between Philippa Boquida, Carl Peterson, Ryan Houlihan, Ferris Stanley, Terry Rayton, Mia Rose, Kelvin Chen, the 7 that go for the AM competition. So Carl Peterson in the box seat on pole position, and he is, 3 points behind Philippa within the championship. So the AMs, I think, possibly is where all the focus is going to come. Kelvin Chen here is another of those drivers who is a potential champion. So Maulana versus Long Lee is one fight, but the AMs could well take up centre stage altogether, couldn't it?
Yeah, and let's explain a little bit about how those drivers have taken part. So the pros were invited by our organisers, but the AMs had to qualify through a hot lap competition to get through. Now, the pros took certain vehicles away, so then that left the rest for the AMs. We've got, I think, basically 2 cars available from each brand, so that we get a nice brand spread across the whole of the race. And then the top 5 AMs were then invited through to the next round, and then the next round, the next round. If you dropped out of that top 5, or indeed didn't take part, you'd have to then re-qualify. So Philippa Boquida here, she didn't pre-qualify into this race because she was outside the top 5. So she had to go back into the hot lap competition in her McLaren and then qualify. So actually, she's done a really great job, and that's allowed her also to have some real dedicated practice time, making sure she can nail a lap around here.
Even though she's the AM class championship leader, 3 points up on Carl Peterson. So
yeah,
Carl on pole, Philippa 4th, Kelvin Chen, who is 7th in the AMs, is 3rd on the grid. It's going to be well worth watching that battle, and as you've been making the point pre-race, there is the pit stop to factor in. When is best to take it? Do you do it early and get it out of the way? Do you do it late? Well, we're about to find out, because the cars work their way around the fantastic Suzuka circuit. Beautiful as He gets himself onto the tail of Kelvin Chen as the cars head then now down towards the chicane, the Casio triangle, and they'll come out of the last curve up towards the timing line. We are just after 5:30 in the morning, local time within the simulation for the game, and so it's going to get brighter and it's going to get hotter as the race wears on. So we're set to go racing then. The final round of the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, presented by Tarmac Works, set to get underway. For Laundry House, it is Carl Peterson on pole position, the white Mercedes of the leading pro in the championship. Andika Maulana lines up alongside. They'll have that long run down towards the first corner in a moment. The lights will flick to green to get this final round of the championship underway. It's another mighty field of cars set to do battle, and Carl Peterson looking to try to convert pole into the race lead. Up towards the timing line they rumble now. The lights will change, will they? Yes, we go racing, and a good getaway by Ryan Houlihan, who jinks out of the pack in the orange McLaren to try to jump ahead of Philippa Maqueda down towards turn one, but it's going to be Carl Peterson who hits the front. Maqueda goes round the outside to gain a place at the expense of Kelvin Chen, or does she? Because she gets run out wide on the outside. Chen there in the Porsche goes up into third place, then Kelvin Chen briefly third, falls back behind Maqueda, but up front it is Carl Peterson who leads the way. And Dika Maulana, crucially though, Ben, is the leading pro.
And looks like, I was about to say, looks like everyone got through pretty cleanly, but Yatlan Laura's got himself a drive-through penalty. That would have been for being out of position at the start, and there is yellow flags flying even now, so someone is losing positions at the tail end of the field.
So the cars power their way through the opening lap at Suzuka. Andrew Lawrenson is quite a long way back, but he's trying to gain places as the field then threads its way for the first time down towards us with Maulana coming under attack. Now, if he's savvy about this, as we've been saying pre-race, he will drive his own race and just try to win the class. As long as he's ahead of Kim Long-Lee, that is absolutely fine, but he would dearly love to win this race from the front. He's all over the back of Carl Peterson's similar Mercedes, and Philippa Maqueda in third place now, getting away a little bit from Kelvin Chen as they drop downhill for the first time, making the run now then up towards the hairpin, and a big lose. That was the leader, Carl Peterson, getting it wrong at the head of the pack. So Carl Peterson, yes, he's off the road in the background. He did lead, and he's chucked it away on the opening lap, man.
Oh, and that would be just cold tyres, just not getting enough temperature into them. As you say, 5:40 in the morning, so they're not being as warm as usual, and that even with a rolling up lap, they just didn't have the grip, and that is a disaster for Peterson from pole to the tail end.
Well, if there's one consolation, it's that it's been done early, so he's got an hour to fight back just under. I wonder whether he'll come into the pit lane also and get that done now, and then he's got all of the strife out of the way. No, he's having another spin, a big slide there. It goes left, it goes right, it goes almost all the way around, but he ends up sitting in the middle of the road, and eventually he bails for the pit lane, and is that retirement for him? So Carl Peterson, wow, high drama on the first lap, all the hard work of pole position, and that was down to the driver, wasn't it?
It was, absolutely. Maybe had his traction control turned off a little bit too much and just simply lost the rear end of the car, and I think out of frustration probably lost it a second time. But that does really... Well, we've seen people recover, but I think at this late stage in the championship, in this kind of class of field, it'd be very hard to do so.
Just seen a spin as well from Yuki Shirakawa off the road, so lots happening. But actually now Andrew Lawrenson is on his toes there. Look, number 911 in the 911. He's been a race winner this year. Remember, he's another of the pros. Now, he's out of the hunt as far as the championship win is concerned, but he'd like a second race victory of the season. Andrew Lawrenson was the winner at Laguna Seca. We've had some great circuits: Monza, Laguna Seca, Silverstone and Spa before Suzuka. Ryan Houlihan currently running in sixth place in the orange McLaren. He's crawling all over the back of Lawrenson. So you've got the two Australian drivers there running together, the McLaren to the inside line, but to no avail. Lawrenson sticks out his elbows, and just for the moment, Ben hangs on to the place.
Great racing at the start of this race, as we've come to expect from these guys. Nice and tight, nice and fair, not too many people making mistakes. We do have some drivers at the tail end of the field that have unfortunately got caught out, but they'll also be able to make their early pit stops, get themselves on an alternate strategy, and already three drivers, Shoesmith, Norman and Lowe in the pits, and Kevin Peterson actually in the pits right now.
Okay, as Philippa Maqueda is the race leader, just to make the point. We've got a bit excited about spinning Mercedes, but as Andika Maulana was delayed in all of that, Philippa has taken over the lead, so that's looking good for her for the AM Championship as you ride on board with Ryan Houlihan here, coming down to the chicane, down to the Casio triangle, down through the gears into first. He's attacking the Porsche of Lawrenson. He's also got Charles Leclerc's Mercedes right up behind him, which is a car, Ben, that always seems to go well early in the race and then fades. But look at this, Houlihan's McLaren really making a go now.
Good stuff. The McLaren always looks strong here, whether it be in the European Series or in our Asia Series, and Houlihan's managed to do a lovely job there. And there was a Mercedes was trying to shut the door, but there was already a Porsche inside.
So Lawrenson then loses a place to Houlihan, just about recovers to keep Charles Leclerc at bay, and then look who's behind him in 8th place, Kin Long Lee. Well, he's just not making the progress he needs to relative to Andika Maulana in order to win the championship. So Maulana doing it right from the front row, being perhaps careful, being conservative on the opening lap, but he's kept out of trouble, and that, as Carl Peterson will explain, is absolutely crucial right now.
3 more drivers into the pits on this last lap. Brett Maybury being one, Russell Reyes and Shakil as the 3rd driver. Brett Maybury, one of the fastest hot lappers in our series, has managed to qualify the last couple of races very, as the fastest hot lapper. And obviously qualifying didn't go too well for him at the tail of the field, so decided to get into the pits, give himself some clear track to get his head down and get some fast lap times in.
There's a drive-through penalty for number 8, Nico Nasty, for making contact on the opening lap with treble 7, Niranjan Kumar, the Lexus driver. In fact, yes, Nico Nassi, the Mercedes driver, making contact. So there's a drive-through going the way of number 8, Nico Nassi. He's there on the screen. Look, 15th place he runs for the moment. And of course, that drive-through then has to be supplemented by the regulation pit stop, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So he'll have to visit the pits twice. And just to make the point, drive-through penalty there applied by our human race control.
Yes.
And any kind of track limits infringements is implemented by the computer. Very good system in ACC that kind of allows you to run a little bit wide without punishing you straight away. It calculates how much time you gained by running wide, and if it's not too much, you get a warning. If it is too much, as Andrew Lawrenson dives for the pits, then you would get a drive-through penalty. An early stop for Lawrenson, interestingly, because he was kind of well up there and didn't seem to be being held up.
No, but perhaps the argument is that he was holding himself up by having to defend. So gets out of a battle, but it's an interesting strategy that at the end of what have we done? 3 laps, in he comes then. So 6th when he bailed for the pit lane, Andrew Lawrenson. It really will be intriguing now to see where he comes out and what pace he's got, because in theory, by doing that early, Ben, he should rejoin in clear air, shouldn't he?
In theory, he should be the leading car that's pitted and therefore, yes, have clear air.
Yeah.
If anybody's managed to get in a couple of fast laps, then we might see what would be the undercut, I suppose, on him because he was squabbling. So let's see. He comes out the pits right this second, and there doesn't seem to be anybody in front of him that has pitted. As you can see on the timing screen, 22nd right now. Maulana with a drive-through.
Absolutely right. I was about to say it. Andika Maulana, a drive-through penalty. So 2nd in the race. There he is, the championship leader. And that is for causing a collision with Carl Peterson. It's another penalty applied by race control. So Peterson was off the road, but it wasn't a spin on cold tyres as we feared. There was an assist, says the race director, and a drive-through. Andika Maulana is the culprit of Carl Peterson's demise. So if we were being unfair to Carl for going off on cold tyres, apologies. Andika Maulana has a case to answer.
Yeah, and that puts King Lon Lee kind of in the box seat, but sitting in 7th position. He's got some serious work to do. Maulana might go into the pits. He might fall to the tail end of the field. But King Lon Lee still needs to take victory.
He's 7th in the race, but of course that would be 3rd in class, which would then become 2nd
yes.
in class. But even if he's 2nd, he still would need, I reckon, Maulana to be outside that top 10 looking at points. So it's still advantage Maulana unless he bins it completely in the stress. Let's see. He's not yet served that penalty, has he? He's not yet come in, but the Mercedes from the Waco's Flip Table Racing Squad, one of the best names that, of Kin Long Lee, goes over the line. So 7th in the race, but again, if it's a white background to the number on that graphic, it's a pro. If it's a red background, it's an amateur. You get points in your class. So it's not as bad as first feared for Kin Long Lee.
Yeah, good point. Charles Leclerc is basically his target then. He sits 2nd, which would give him 76 points. And already Maulana on 77 if he doesn't score any today, which means Maulana would still be the champion by 1 point. So King Lon Lee has to pass Charles Leclerc ahead of him. Interestingly, when we went on board with Leclerc, He's on map 2. We've seen this all season. The Mercedes is thirsty, so they have to run at a slightly less optimum map so that they can get to the end of the race without needing to take fuel in the pit stop, which would be ultimately a longer and more punishing thing to do. So they turn the engine down so it doesn't quite use much fuel. It delivers the power in a slightly different way as well, and that should allow them to get to the end of the race. But that is a concern for all of our Mercedes drivers.
Yuki Shirakawa, who's had his own spin, is also now being warned, causing a collision with Ryan Houlihan. Right now, Ferris Stanley, who had such a good run last time out at Spa, hustled on in pursuit of the number 94 Mercedes, the car of Zheng Yin. And this is Ferris Stanley's view. He's another of the Laundry House contingent. And the dual livery then, the Laundry House Miami Blue plus Ferrari Red, and it works well on that car as Filippo Bocquida up front leads the way despite the penalised Maulana bringing down that gap.
It's just so impressive from Philippa that, as I said at the start of the show, she did not qualify into this race because she was outside the top 5 in our previous event, so had to go through hot lap qualifying, had to use the car in which she already raced, so she had to be in that McLaren. So many limitations as Maulana comes into the pits. This looks to be his drive-through penalty, and then he will do another pit stop later on to complete his obligatory penalty. But yeah, so impressive from Bocquida to get herself through in a very, very competitive hot lap situation, and now be at the head of the field. And look at those, all of the AMs, top 4 is all AMs now.
It's fascinating, isn't it, to see how the AMs go, but also to understand the differentiation between them, because they're all sim racing experts. As you see, even the AMs are very, very good indeed. Right, back on track then is Andika Maulana. We need to see where that puts him relative to Andrew Lawrenson, bearing in mind that Maulana has got to do it all over again. So that was the drive of shame, if you like, down the pit lane for the penalty. Then he will have to serve the obligatory stop. We've had Shirakawa just make his pit stop. Brett Maybury, I think Ben said, had pitted very early on in the race. So green on that graphic means they've made the pit stop. Okrida now leads from Kelvin Chen, and they are both AMs. They're both fighting for the championship. There's almost 2.5 seconds between them, whereas this little battle pack lower down the order is the 6th place. Kin Long Lee coming under real pressure now from Mohammed Ali. First time out in that Legion of Racers Aston Martin, and Alif is doing a very impressive job, isn't he?
Yeah, very, very strong sim racer across all the different platforms in Asia. Races on iRacing and I think Race Room as well. He's quite a good driver. But nice to have him with us. And as you say, P7 doing a really, really solid job. Now, I was looking at the tail end of the field because Shirakawa had come out in between Lawrenson and Maybury. But maybe has had an issue because the graphic is now showing Shirakawa outside that top 23. Yeah, 7 seconds. He's lost time on that last lap. So something's happened. But he came out within 3 seconds of Lawrenson. Brett Maybury's 5.3 back. And that's kind of our other battle at the moment for those that have pitted.
Okay, there you've got Bank Tanatit with the Lamborghini coming up over the timing line. So Tanatit currently in 12th place. His next target being Solov Honorina Raleigh with the Audi. Nose to tail they run as lower down the order there. Look, there are more squabbles going on. In 23rd place is Masatoshi Kaneko, another of the newcomers, if you like, through the hot lap. So he's done a good job to get into the race, and he's coming under attack from Jeffrey Conn with the Bentley, and he too is in his first outing.
Yeah, so there are various, as I said at the start of the show, every single mark is represented in this championship, which I really like actually, because we do see some other sim racing championships where all the teams do so much testing that they basically end up with the same conclusion of that car is the best, and then you end up with a one make GT3 race. Here, the organisers have forced every single brand onto the track, and so some cars are available, 2 cars, some are 1. Oh, Bentley trying to go around the outside, that was never going to work, and unfortunately loses the position to the Ferrari. Is that Shirakawa coming through? Yes, it is.
I think it is, yes, after his earlier stop. So newcomer off the road, Jeffrey Conn, and he's now attacking once again on that Lexus number 50 of Kaneko. Of course, as different brands over the last few months have announced changes to their real-world motorsport programs in esports, it will be your only opportunity to see some of these cars perhaps in the future. BMW having a think about its future, Bentley scaling back as well. But in esports, GT3 will always be alive and well, seemingly, with this great variety of car. Now we've got another drive-through that I noticed had just been applied lower down to Russell Ray's, and this battle still rages on. So Kaneko battles as Bank Tanatip is another driver a little bit frustrated because the Lamborghini can't yet find a way past the best of the Audis, can it?
No, not quite close enough here. Sometimes that chicane is an overtaking opportunity, but it's incredibly narrow. Once you're sitting inside one of these cars, I don't know what it's like in real life, but certainly on the sim, when you get to that chicane, you suddenly think, how am I supposed to be able to get this car through here? It just narrows up. The chicane is so tight, and it suddenly gives you a real... From the outside view, I find this generally, actually, from the outside view, racetracks look very wide. When you actually go to them in real life, whether it be the back end of Brands Hatch or Monza is especially narrow in comparison to what you see on TV. And this whole section up here, this sinuous section of Suzuka, incredibly narrow, really very much one line, but TV pictures, whether it be in esports or real life, do make it much wider. So that's where the bravery of overtaking really amplifies, when you realise just how little space there is to thread a car down the inside on a racing line as well without losing too much grip.
Now, Bank Tanatip losing a bit of ground relative to Ralahi, who in turn is closing on Terry Rayton. There you've got Ferry Stanley there in the Ferrari going through. Now he's getting himself onto the tail of Zheng Yin's Mercedes. That gap coming down, the lead gap, mind you, is going up, isn't it? Philippa Baquida is now 2.5 seconds to the good relative to Kelvin Chen, although our internet connection is not looking fantastic relative to Chen, so let's hope that's not going to be an issue. And in the Coupe des Dames, they're 1 and 3, aren't they? Philippa Baquida leads, and Mia Rose is third.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic to see. Mia, unfortunately, missing around, and therefore she's an outside bet for the championship, having taken victory 2 rounds ago. I think she took the victory and then she missed the next round. Philippa Baquida we've seen throughout, and therefore she has the advantage, especially now that Carl Peterson had that spin and has dropped to the tail end of the field. Her next closest rival is Ryan Houlihan, and he is 4th, but whilst Baquida leads, nobody can touch her.
No, that's right. It's advantage Philippa, absolutely. And the advantage that she's got over Kelvin Chen, who is the real outsider, 7th in AMS, that's now up to, 2.9 seconds. Mia Rose there goes through, but that's the race leader then. So Philippa Baquida at the end of the first quarter of the race, looking very strong indeed up front. And we did see this at Silverstone as well. I know there was contact in the end, and that usurped her from the race lead, but Philippa looked very accomplished up front at Silverstone in round 3 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. McLaren, I think, is really suitable for Silverstone. We always see it going very well there. So it's a car that suits that track. And really, the cars that suit the tracks in the real world should replicate here in ACC. There's so much data that passes both on tyres, but also from all the different manufacturers to the guys that model the game, Kunos, who've created this game. They really have an attention to detail. This is... I say game, this is not a game, and that's not the way to do it. It's just about kept the Ferrari pace point in the wrong direction. But the way that the data flows from all these different manufacturers to Kunos to create a simulation, it's ACC, and Kunos is called Kunos Simulation rather than gaming or whatever. This is supposed to be exactly as it is in real life. And for me, I think it is the closest game to real life, the closest platform to real life as you can get. And it's interesting to note that also with the new download that came in on the 18th of November that kind of updated to the 2020 season, we added a couple of extra cars. There was a couple of changes kind of back end that allowed some of the existing cars to feel better. So manufacturers have been working with Kunos to say, hey, come on, I want my car to replicate real life. I want to be competitive. I want the sim drivers to choose my car to create that brand association. And so those manufacturers that have sim racing departments have been working very hard across all the different platforms to make sure that their car is replicated and feels correct, but also is competitive too.
Yes, I was about to touch on that. You've got manufacturers now with a sim racing motorsport department. Ryan Duon, one of the hot lappers, comes into the pit to serve a mandatory stop. Ferry Stanley, in the meantime, has got himself a little bit closer to Ying Zhen. Then he's pushing for 8th place as the cars wriggle their way here through the snake up towards the anti-banked curve and then towards Dunlop. So Ferry Stanley doing a very good job again, as we saw at Spa. Philippa Maqueda, 2.9 seconds to the good right now, with Mia Rose in third place. Ryan Houlihan is the one that's kind of needing to get on with the job here, because he's in that leading group, but not close enough, and he needs to be gaining places and gaining points to try to strike if anything happens to Philippa Maqueda.
The other thing to remember is Andrew Lawrenson down in 18th position right now, but with the pit stop. Now, he's been able to lap quite a few laps in clear air, and his pace has been very, very good, equal to Philippa Maqueda. But on the last lap, as you can see, he had to get past Prix in 19th position now, and he's starting to find himself in the slower runners of our race. Now that is going to really compromise his pace, and that's why I think a lot of these drivers choose not to pit early, if they can, so that they don't fall into that area of, number one, it's the guys that haven't pitted, but number two, it's the guys that haven't pitted that are slow, that they need to find a way past, and suddenly you're losing 1 or 2 seconds a lap. You can't keep the pace of our leader, and your advantage, your opportunity to jump the leader goes away.
So Philippa Maqueda, race leader now by 3 seconds. Is she the fastest driver on track, or is there somebody in the pack going quicker at the moment, Dan? Do we know?
The top 3 are in the 59s, as is Maulana, and every so often Lawrenson is in the 59s when he's got a clear lap. So
right.
Basically we've got 5 guys, 159. The rest are in the 2s and plus.
Maulana, had that been his mandatory stop, would still be, of course, the best of the stoppers. But it was a drive-through, so he's 14th ahead of Lawrenson, but he's got to serve the regulation stop, and therefore, at the second time of asking, will drop away down the field. He's in 14th place, and Andika Maulana still needing to push. Now, that, for the moment, puts him, 5th within the class, and Kinlong Lee is currently second, so that would give him 76 points, and it would give Maulana 87. So he's still, for the moment, on target to win the championship. The fascination will come as to where he falls in class after the mandatory stop that Maulana must yet make.
Yes, that's a good point. Although Maulana's pit stop would have been slightly shorter than a normal pit stop, because he didn't need to be stationary in his pit box, and even though they're not actually doing anything in terms of tyres or fuel, there is kind of 2 or 3 seconds of stationary time in a pit stop. So probably his pit stop was 5 seconds shorter than it would have been, because he didn't actually stop, he just drove through the pits. But there are quite a few drivers in the pro category that have taken their pit stops, and he may be falling behind the likes of Shirakawa and Law once he does do his regulation stop. But actually it is only Lawrenson, Shirakawa and Law really where he could fall into.
Yeah, Shirakawa may be less of a threat because he had a spin, so he's lost time as well. It's the driver that's lost the least time, isn't it, out of that pro battle of the early stoppers. Terry Rayton goes through in the top 10 overall with the Lamborghini. That's the best of the Hurricanes right now as he comes down towards the chicane, the Casio Triangle. Bounce over the curb, turn right, and then now out of the last curve, up over the timing line with Ferry Stanley, the driver that Terry Rayton is chasing after, and Stanley in turn is going after the red Mercedes there of Jin Yang as they dive down towards turn 1. Long, fast straight, turn in. And it just keeps on going, that corner, doesn't it?
Yeah, almost turn 1 in certain cars is a braking zone for the second turn, because you kind of trail brake through, but you're turning at the same time, so you just have to be very, very careful that the rear end doesn't break away from you. And I think in a GT3 car, you probably are braking a bit more for that first turn, getting a little squirt of power on between 1 and 2 before then braking harder. But it's really nice to drive, because certainly a lot of these earlier corners have a bit of camber in them as well, so you can almost send the car in far quicker than you would expect, and because of the camber, the car holds the track. I also love this part of the circuit, because that's a really fast right-hand turn, and then you kind of get the car settled and sorted for the tighter second part before you go under the bridge.
You see there what you were talking about earlier on, the track looking narrow as you go between the barriers on either side, and out wide there goes Zheng Yin, so that's going to give Ferry Stanley a chance to challenge. He almost got up alongside, but the Grunt and Go Mercedes had the drive out of the corner, didn't it? So look back now. You're riding on board the 8th place Mercedes, and Ferry Stanley is closed, but again, not able to make a move. Really frustrated here that he's stuck behind that Mercedes for lap after lap.
Yeah, and this is what I said at the start of the show. it's a great driver's circuit, but it's not an easy place to overtake unless you have a really good pace advantage. And you can tell that Ferris Stanley does. He's managing to carry speed into the corners in the way that Mercedes can't. Remember also, the Mercedes is probably not running on full fuel mixture, whereas the Ferrari certainly is. So he'll even have a bit more punch out of the corners and maybe a bit more straight line speed at the end of the straights, but just not quite close enough. And this is where if I was Stanley, I'd be diving into the pits, clearing the traffic, and knowing that I can probably go faster than they are at the moment. They're doing 2:01s right now.
And of course, as we are now looking at the track temperature going up, the ambient going up as well, and that perhaps having a different effect on the performance of some of the cars. But Ferris Stanley still stuck there for the moment behind that Mercedes.
What it certainly will do is have an effect on the tyres, because the track was very, very cold when we started the race. And now with the temperature going into the tarmac, and that will be transferred in the tyres, there is always a little bit of preservation of your tyres in these races. Generally, Pirelli should be able to do more than an hour, but because of the conditions that we're throwing at it and the way that these drivers are attacking and setting up the cars, they'll set the cars up so that they use the tyres for an hour. They might be able to set the cars up to make the tyres last longer, but because the race is only an hour, they'll try and use as much out as possible. But we may see pace drop off in the second half of the race. And actually just looking at the live timing, the likes of Mia Rose, for instance, she may have traffic, but she's already lost to her best lap of the race, nearly a second in this particular lap, and she's only halfway through it.
But equally, the lead gap has gone up again, 3.5 seconds, and Mia Rose a further 3 seconds back in third place. Kelvin Chen then in second spot, but just not being able to bring down that gap to Boquida. And interesting as well, you look at the pace of the AM, Charles Teixeira, of the pros, I should say. Charles Teixeira, the leading pro, just isn't making progress up against the top 4, all of whom are AM drivers. He's just a little bit stuck, isn't he?
Ryan Houlihan's last lap, 2:0.53, whereas Boquida, Chen and Mia Rose all in the 2:0.1s. So, yeah, losing a couple of tenths a lap, and actually even his fastest lap, Houlihan's fastest lap, nowhere near the pace of the top 3, and then for Teixeira about half a second back from that. So definitely a pace disadvantage there from Teixeira. And as I say, we talk about pro and am, but they're all professional sim races, and it was simply that some were invited and others had to qualify.
So Philippa Boquida, 4 seconds to the good as Ferris Stanley in 9th place wriggles his way then through the snake, and we're approaching the halfway point in this race. Terry Rayton has bailed out of that battle pack and he's gone for the pit lane. There's another yellow flag out somewhere on track, and after a pretty frantic first couple of laps with a leader off the road and the championship leader being given a penalty, Andika Maulana is 12th on the racetrack right now, but still needs to serve that regulation pit stop, so a lot could yet pan out of this.
So Jeffrey Conn, I think, is the man that's caused that yellow flag. He's down in 26th position, and he's made a very, very slow lap. So I don't have eyes on exactly what's happened, but a very slow lap from Jeffrey Conn, and I think he's heading to the pit lane as well now.
We saw him going wide early on, didn't we, in the Bentley, as here are Mohammed Ali in the Legion of Racers Aston Martin, doing a good job. As Ben has been saying, he's an experienced sim racer, even though this is the first time we've seen him in this championship, and with a little bit of correction applied, he's up through the gears, third as the road climbs uphill now, under the bridge, under the gantry, and Ali running in 7th place, and his target, of course, is the man fighting for the Pro Championship, Kin Long Lee.
Yeah, absolutely, and King Long Lee he needs to get Teixeira. He really does. I mean, ultimately, I think there's maybe not enough pace in enough of our pro competitors to stop Maulana from taking this championship. They seem to be too far spread, really, for him to fall too far down the pack. But King Long Lee needs to chase and take Teixeira. And Teixeira, as we said already, has had these races where he looks good at the start, but it kind of fades away. He either uses the tyres too much, uses the fuel too much, and then drops in the second half of the race. So I guess for King Long Lee, that's what he'll be hoping for. And actually, memory serves that Kin-Long Lee has the kind of the opposite races. He's quite quiet at the start of the race, doesn't qualify very well, but ends up in a great position by the end.
That's right. He's not had a race win either, has he, Kin-Long Lee? But he has had a second. So he always gets himself sort of there or thereabouts, to use the phrase. Now, Solofenarina Rahali is being attacked once more by Bank Tanatit for 10th place. The gap had widened between those two, but Tanatit is once more on the tail. So Bank showing interest again as he comes then now with the pair of them inching up onto the tail of Ferris Stanley, who is still stuck behind Yin Zheng. So a four-way fight now for 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th. He's building up really nicely.
That joke didn't go unnoticed. Just rude to interrupt by laughing.
Thank you so much. Right, Tanatit then presses on, but can't do anything for the moment about Raleigh, can he? With Yin Zheng doing a very good job of keeping Ferris Stanley at bay. Right, brake hard, swing left, but not really an opportunity to challenge there. Still keeping an eye to the lead gap. Philippa Mokwida now 4.6 seconds up the road from Kelvin Chen. Mia Rose third, and Ryan Houlihan, his McLaren, not evincing the same pace as the similar car at Mokwida is.
It's worth kind of giving a shout out to Legion of Racers because they are probably one of the most professional teams in sim racing over in Asia, with Maulana as part of their team, Luis Moreno and Mohammed Alif. They really do kind of lead in terms of whenever I was been looking for sim racers represented in the Asia region, their name always comes up. Ferris Stanley finally is bailed out of being held up by Zen. Let's see where he comes back out of those that have pitted. At the moment, it's still Lawrenson that leads that group, and he actually leads by a decent margin now over Brett Maybury.
And Terry Rayton has been given a drive-through for an unsafe rejoin on lap 12. Now, was that a rejoin from the pits, or was that a rejoin from an incident? Either way, he has been issued from race control with a drive-through penalty.
Well, he was in the pits a couple of laps ago, and a couple of laps ago could have been lap 12. So I don't know how you can unsafe rejoin the pits unless you literally go across the white line, in which case that should be a drive-through penalty, but that would be phrased differently. So interesting one. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to look back too much. So we don't have the replay facilities for this championship, but either way, a bit of a shame actually for Terry Rayton, because we haven't seen him participating in the last couple of rounds, and he was on the good pace at the start of the season.
Yeah, he's had a couple of sevens outright, and was one of those drivers in the AM class championship battle. So he'll still be up there, but not as up as he wants to be, really, as we go now with 28 minutes to go towards the business end of this race. 5 seconds is the margin between Philippa Mokwida and Kelvin Chen. She's getting away all the time. Just wonder whether Mia Rose might not be closing on Kelvin Chen, as here Mohammed Alif starts to inch up onto the back of Kin-Long Lee. Look back for the Mercedes. Very definitely that Aston Martin. He's working well around here, and the gap is closing again, Ben, down towards the chicane.
But just not such an easy place to overtake unless you really are alongside. Even if you show a nose and get a bit of an overlap, there's such a danger of the guy in front of you turning in on you that you just have to be so careful, and almost you need your competitor to have a big wobble through 130R to get the extra momentum to get down the inside.
So there is Kin-Long Lee, who turns through, looking pretty good up front right now, in this contest at least. But while he's having to defend, of course, so his lap times aren't going to be all that strong, and that means in turn that he's losing ground relative to Andika Maulana, who has still yet to serve the regulation stop. Andrew Lawrenson, as the best of the stoppers, is up now into 14th place. Is that enough to bring him into, say, the top 3 come the very end? Andrew Lawrenson, the Laguna Seca winner, as right now Kin-Long Lee has been given a real workover by Mohammed Alif. This fight rages on, and it's now for 6th place overall.
So Lawrenson's still holding on, and actually, as I say, that gap to the best of the pit stoppers has extended. But interestingly, at the moment, we're seeing Bank Tanatit come out ahead of him. Now, that might just be that the timing screen hasn't yet caught up, as we've got Andy Nang side by side for 12th position. And it's just up ahead where the Lamborghini may have come out ahead of them. So that would be very interesting if that is the case. No, now Bank Tanatit's moving further down. The timing screen just takes a little while to correct itself, so it puts Lawrenson back ahead. But he has a good advantage over Ferris Stanley, and that was actually Lawrenson getting past now.
Right, so Andrew Lawrenson up to 11th place overall as Andy Gann goes through with the Nissan. Kind of home soil for the car, if you like. And the vocative liveried car goes through as Philippa Baquida is now in the traffic. So lapped car directly behind. What's the gap now? 5.5 seconds over Kelvin Chen. 25 minutes to go. This is looking very, very promising indeed. What better way to win a championship than to win the race outright?
Proper dominating performance as well. Obviously didn't get the best out of qualifying to find herself on the second row of the grid, but as soon as she's hit the front, her pace has been spellbinding. She's lap after lap one of the only people to be in the 159s. Every so often Kelvin Chen and Mia Rose are able to get into the 59s, but Baquida is so consistently inside the 59s. And as you say, extending the advantage at the head of the field. Now she just needs to make sure she pits at the right time. But for the moment, why pit? Look at the traffic ahead of her. There is none.
Yep, clear road, so the lap times are good. Ralahi has pitted in the meantime, as lower down the order there. We keep Lau in the Lexus. Battles on. The Malaysian driver is 25th, going after Isaac Norman with the Kazan Motorsport Nissan. Great noise, both of those cars make. Proper booming noise that they make, as there is the Lexus then. But Andrew Lawrenson into the top 10 now. 911 Porsche working its way forward, helped in part by others serving their pit stops, but in other words, a lot yet to shake out of this race.
I feel like we don't see that Lexus very often in real world GT3 racing. It's kind of a rarity, like the Honda.
So there, Ukit Lau runs it wide over the curb, comes now down towards the Casio triangle up towards the end of the lap. 24 minutes still on the clock, and again he's got himself close, but not quite close enough to be able to have a real push for position now. Now, where is Maulana out of all of this? He is still pressing on and getting himself now further up that top 10 until the obligatory pit stop comes. But I guess he'll try and leave that right to the very end of the race, won't he?
Houlihan comes into the pits, so that's fourth position, making a decision. Now, he came into the pits about 10, 11 seconds back from Baquida, as a Leaf also joins him. Now, this will be more interesting to see where Houlihan falls in and see how much Lawrenson has managed to pick up in terms of pace. I think Lawrenson is still going to be... I think Lawrenson's going to be ahead of these two, which will very much put him into contention. Maybe not for the victory, but at least for a top three.
Now, what do they need to do to the cars as the race wears on? Is there any change to an engine map that we know of as the temperatures rise, or can you pretty much go at the same pace on the same settings all the way through?
I think the same settings, absolutely. Maybe we're not changing tyres, so you can't change the tyre pressures at all, and you shouldn't be needing to refuel. So the pit stop should be absolutely nothing for most of these drivers. It'll be down to the drivers making sure that they keep the tyres within the pressure window, the temperature window they need to, and they've got all the data on their dashboard, so they can do that. Push too hard, pressures and temperatures go up, then you start losing grip, you start sliding, that pushes the temperatures and pressures further up. So once you get out of that window, it can be very hard to bring it back. So really drive to your own pace, drive to the numbers. Maybe this could be Philippa Baquida's downfall. Maybe she's been pushing too hard and the tyres might say no at the end of the race. But for the moment, it's looking very, very impressive.
Absolutely right. I mean, that gap, which perhaps echoes what you're saying about pushing so hard, is going up all the time, nearly at 6 seconds now over Kelvin Chen. Ferris Stanley is one of those that has stopped, so he is third of the stoppers. Andika Maulana is up into 7th place overall now, which is 4th in class. It's the class position, really, that's the fascination after he serves that regulation stop.
And our leader's in. Philippa Baquida's brought her McLaren into the pits. Okay. Interestingly, the last pitter, Ryan Houlihan, came out behind Andrew Lawrenson. So this could have been a real genius move from Lawrenson to pit very, very early. We need to see where Philippa Baquida is coming out onto track. in comparison to Lawrenson, because I think it's going to be very, very close for the victory overall. Now, of course, they're in 2 different classes, so it doesn't matter too much. Bakita's still in pit lane right now. And where is Lawrenson in relation?
Let's see then as Rui Kit Lau goes through. Still way down the order in 25th place. There is Philippa Baquida back out on the circuit, shown as being in 7th place, the best of the stoppers. Ahead, therefore, of Andrew Lawrenson. Now, let's just confirm that as they get to the next timing point. Look in the background. Yes, there's the Porsche. So she is ahead. She has kept the race lead on the pit stops.
Okay, but what is the gap between Bakita and Lawrenson, and where does it allow the others that were behind her to slot in? The likes of Kelvin Chen and Mia Rose. That will be very, very interesting at the next split point. Will be around here as she comes round past the shorten loop and over the split. We wait for Lawrenson's time and the gap to appear on our timing screen on the left. It's 7.3 seconds. So I think Kelvin Chen and Mia Rose could come into the pits and get ahead of Lawrenson, but Lawrenson would be 4th. And
then what about Thesera and Lee and Zhang relative to Lawrenson when they rather pit, because of course we're then thinking of that pro class situation for the championship for Maulana. So although Philippa Baquida looks like she's going to dominate the race, there's an awful lot that's going to pan out down in that pro category. Mia Rose up into 2nd place now. There she is after Kelvin Chen. 2 seconds is the margin betwixt the two. And then Thesera, Lee, Zhang, Maulana, the leading quartet within the pro category, with 20 minutes to go. We're into the last third of the race now. The gap between Mia Rose and Thesera at 12 seconds. So for me, Thesera and King will fall in behind Lawrenson, and that's incredibly key, because that means it will be even harder for King Long Lee to get himself into the lead of the pro battle. Lawrenson, for me, has definitely got that one sealed up right now. So once they pit, I think both of them, I don't think they'll go any further down. Maulana has the potential to drop further down, but I'm not sure it's going to be easy for King Long Lee to get himself the victory here with 20 minutes remaining. The other nice thing about this championship is that you don't have to worry about drop scores like we did for one of the categories in the European Championship. I've never been a fan of drop score, but it's to the point. However, it makes it a good, clear fight all the way down. You do well, you get more points, you win. Pure and simple, exactly how it should be. The thought of you winning a championship by fewer points but winning on a drop score has always been an anathema to me. Now, right now, Andika Maulana has caught up to Ying Zhen, but has got himself stuck, and this means that he's losing pace, which he can ill afford to lose, Ben, relative to the pit stop. Well, remember, it was Ying Zhen who had a nice queue of cars behind him early on in the race, with Ferris Stanley being one, and eventually they've all bailed out of that battle and all gone into the pits rather than being able to actually pass on track. Now, Maulana looks like he's got a lot better pace than Zhen, so it might be easier, and Zhen just runs a little bit wide through the first part of the spoon curve. Here's Ferris Stanley under attack. Oh, and contact as well from Alif, and into the wall. Unlucky for Ferris Stanley. Well, he might be able to rejoin from there, but it drops him down the field. And remember that he was coming into this race 4th in the AMP category, so that's bad news for him as far as the championship is concerned. And also, Mohammed Ali may well have a case to answer out of all of that. He may well be judged to be the aggressor, the guilty party. So the leading stopper remains Philippa Baquida, although actually, look at Andrew Lawrenson. He's a little bit closer. Over 7, has now come down to 6.5 seconds. So Lawrenson is not giving up, is he? As Maulana now pits, this is the regulation stop to get him out of the traffic ban. Yep, sensible thinking from Maulana. Knew that he was losing too much time behind Zhen and brings himself into the pits. That was the right moment to do it. How many cars is he going to drop back? Remember, we're not really concerned about the guys with the red numbers. It's only the white numbers as to how far he will fall behind. And I think he may fall behind 3 of them. He might be in the kind of the likes of Bank Tanatip. But in terms of the points for King Long Lee, I think he would still, Maulana, be within enough points to take the championship, even if it's going to be a difficult one to take victory on. Okay, there he is. He rejoins. Maulana back out, so he will fall in ahead of Alif. That puts him into, what's that going to be, 10th place overall now. And Andy Gann, ahead of him, has yet to stop. So he's going to gain another place anyway, Andy Gann being a driver within the pro category. So right now, That's going to put Maulana 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going to gain a place back. So that's going to put him 5th in class for 87 points. And Kin Long Lee 2nd for 76. Maulana has still done this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think by doing this little stop and crucially getting ahead of Alif, he's going to be able to get enough pace in to jump Zen when Zen comes into the pits. So he'll jump another position thanks to that. Probably not able to get ahead of the two leading Mercedes in the pro category, Kin Long Lee and Thesira. Interestingly though, Kin Long Lee just doesn't have the pace of Thesira. He hasn't been able to even really keep up with Thesira. Whether that's down to what fuel map they're using, and maybe Kin Long Lee is being a bit kinder on his tyres, and this is the moment where we'll start to see that with 15 minutes remaining. But for a man that's been battling in the championship, and of course he hasn't actually taken a victory in the championship, 2 second positions, it's not a completely dominant performance. As we go back on board with Maulana, just take a look at that small number 2 beside the gear changes. That means that he is still in map 2 and unable to use all the power of that Mercedes to keep enough fuel to the end of the race.
So this is on board with Maulana down towards the chicane. You see him going down through the gears. He turns right, rattles over the curb, swings left, now back onto the power. So pit serve, penalty stop, and of course the regulation stop. Now the good news is he can run to the end of the race. The target for him on the racetrack is Ryan Houlihan, who we can just about see in the distance. He's 3 seconds back, and he's got 3 of his class rivals all needing yet to make a stop. He might even be able to jump all 3 of them, given his natural pace. Let's find out then, because right now Charles Thesira, who's flattered to deceive really all season, hangs on to the class lead. But the best that Charles Thesira has had all season is a 7th place overall. Kin Long Lee, well, he's also been a driver yet to score a win, but has been a consistent racer, if nothing else. And right now, Andy Gann comes under attack from Bank Tanatip.
Pace at the front is not particularly good right now. Kelvin Chen and Mia Rose are not really lapping that fast, probably because they've got traffic, but that is going to give more good news for Philippa Bakida, who at the moment is 6th, but she's the best of the stoppers and has a 6.2 second advantage over Lawrenson. So now into the pits. Was that Alif coming into the pits? No, he's already
that was
pitted,
Kelvin Chen.
so...
That was Chen.
Ah, yes, of course.
So Kelvin Chen, the race leader, maybe that was one of the reasons why they'd been dropping time, because Chen was busy defending. But now he comes in. So Mia Rose to the top of the leaderboard. And she now is the race leader until she serves her regulation stop. Now she is 9:09. Mia Rose then goes through the snake up towards the so-called anti-banked curve and treats this like a qualifying session now, with clear road ahead, trying to push and gain a place maybe when she serves the stop. Andrew Lawrenson, in the meantime, is in 7th place overall, the 2nd of the stoppers. And although he's got the gap down a little against Philippa Bakida, we're talking hundreds and at best 10ths, aren't we, rather than anything significant.
This is a man that really should be in the fight for the championship, but having missed a round, unfortunately wasn't able to. Porsche versus Porsche. Lawrenson on track, round the outside and ahead, wow, of Kelvin Chen. So actually, it's going to be very, very close for Mia. No, Mia Rose is going to lose out as well. So yeah. Lawrenson is going to find himself, I think, P2 by the end of this.
P2 possibly, but that would be a class win, wouldn't it? If he can stay in 2nd place behind Bakida, it could be a class win. Where was he on the grid? He was on the 4th row. Philippa Bakida was on the 2nd row of the grid. So arguably the Porsche doesn't have the pace anyway, because it didn't out-qualify the McLaren in the qualifying period early on in the day. So Andrew Lawrenson certainly pushing hard, and we are getting news of another penalty, and it is to Mohammed Alif drive through for causing a collision with Ferris Stanley. Don't think anybody's a huge amount surprised about that.
And we saw it, so yeah, no hiding for him.
Right, there is Alif then. First time out, drawing attention to himself with the stewards. For next season, he'll have to turn over a new Alif, won't he? So he's got a drive through, running in 10th place at the moment.
On form today,
Until it's the end of the season. Right, Mia Rose has pitted then. Race leader comes in. This is going to be fascinating now to see how far she drops down the order.
Not going to be a huge amount different to when we had... Oh, actually, we've got Kin Long Lee also in the pits as well. We saw Kelvin Chen only in the pits 1 lap ago, so trying to do the overlap or the undercut is not really necessarily going to work. Here is Chen behind Lawrenson. Well done to our directors for picking that up. Here comes Mia Rose coming out of the pit lane. And actually, how has she done that? She's going to have a huge advantage over the 2 Porsches. The Porsches now exit the final corner. You'll see them at the top of the screen, but unless... I don't understand how she's got that much an advantage over Kelvin Chen. She's actually jumped Chen from the pits.
And Baquida.
By a lot.
She's ahead of Philippa Baquida. So
Oh, wow.
she's now effectively the race leader because the 2 ahead have yet to stop. So, yes, that's an extraordinary situation. Either that was an absolute demon stint when she was in the lead and had clear road around her, or discuss something has happened in the pits, because that has been an absolute blinding stop for Mia Rose to jump everybody then that has already served the regulation pit stop and come out as the race leader with 10 minutes on the clock. Rattles over the curb and bounces out wide. Pressure might tell here, but Mia Rose, the best of the stoppers and also the leader in our unofficial Coupe de Dame, into the bargain.
I can't work that out because in theory all the pit stops should be exactly the same unless people have been taking a splash of fuel here and there. But everything made sense up until the Aston Martin went into the pits. I cannot understand how she's managed to do... I mean, what kind of advantage? She's managed to find 8 to 10 seconds over Baquida since Baquida pitted, because there was that kind of advantage before the pit stops. And Baquida's not exactly been in traffic. She's not being held up by slower cars. Mia Rose did do a couple of really good laps, but I can't work that one out. I'm going to have to go to somebody more expert in Discord to work that one.
Right, I'll leave you to that. I'll just talk about the race. Ben can work out strategy here. Andika Maulana, in the meantime, is busy trying to find a way up past Ryan Houlihan. Now, this is for position. It's for 8th overall, bearing in mind there's a couple of yet to stop drivers further up the road. Maulana now drags up to the outside of the McLaren, coming towards us then now, heading towards the 130R. He goes round the outside. Maulana gains the place then, gets up into 8th spot overall now. So Andika Maulana certainly not fazed by that earlier penalty given to him after the contact with Carl Peterson. Maybe you could argue that that's not how you should win a championship, by being involved in an incident, but he has recovered from that penalty very well indeed. As there, look, Brett Maybury's Porsche clambers all over the back of Bank Tanatip's Lamborghini as they now hit the pit straight once more.
So we just got Thesera to come into the pits then. I suppose that gives Kin Long Lee the opportunity to jump him, as they're now on different parts of the track. But in terms of the championship, Kin Long Lee still is one car, as in Lawrenson, away from taking the victory, and Maulana is only 1.2 seconds behind him. So really, it's still advantage Maulana by a long shot.
Can I ask you another question about the simulation within the game itself? We started at about 5:37 a.m. and we're now at 7:22, so you don't presumably therefore have to simulate real time, minute by minute. You can fast forward the clock a little bit for different conditions.
Absolutely. So you can choose real time, as we have done for most of the season. But the opportunity, we thought we were trying to have a dark start going in through the sunrise into the morning, and to do that you can select ×2 or ×4 real time, and so that's why the clock is a bit faster than us. We haven't just lost an hour of our lives somehow.
Right, I was getting concerned about my watch, that's all. Right, so that explains it. We've got 7 minutes, a real 7 minutes of the race to go, as Baquida and Lawrenson are separated by 7 seconds again. There is the recovering Ferris Stanley down in 15th after that contact with Alif, who has yet to serve the drive-through penalty. So good squabbles rage on all the way down the field, although Alif, you've got to say, is being a little bit reluctant to serve this drive-through right now. 7 minutes are on the clock, and Mia Rose effectively the race leader, but we need to see those other 2 Mercedes where they're going to end up once they have served the stop. Another one that's yet to serve that drive-through is Ralahi. That's been on the screen for quite a long time.
Not sure in the regulations whether they have to do it within 3 laps, but Alif now comes into the pits. Generally in real world motorsport you do, but obviously in the world of sim racing we can do whatever we like. We are not constrained by anything. So some rules can be a bit different. It's kind of what I love about sim racing, is it's the opportunity to innovate and play with something different, like this opportunity to have a pit stop without actually needing to change anything. You wouldn't really do that in real life, but in the sim world, it just has really spiced up these hour races and given us an extra thing to think about and talk about.
That takes me back to 1980s club racing, where you get out the car, run round and get back in again in some of the mini enduros. Now, Andika Maulana here has caught his championship rival. So, not only is Maulana looking to win the title, he wants to secure it by getting ahead of Kin Long Lee. There was a 10th between them at the last timing point. Maulana now comes up to the outside, and he is right on the tail of Kin Long Lee. They are fighting here for 4th and 5th in class. Maulana is on target to win the championship, but he wants to make sure that he is as high up the order as he can possibly be, and to do that, he wants to get past Kin Long Lee, who will go through the championship winless. Now, Ralahi, who has yet to serve his drive-through, has been given a stop-go of 30 seconds. There you've got the Mercedes going through.
Yeah, so he did go into the pits and serve his drive-through, and I think that stop-go is for him speeding in the pit lane. Unfortunately, he's just collecting and collecting and collecting. Now, Maulana needs to be incredibly careful here and make sure this is a clean pass, because it would be very, very easy to attract the attention of the race stewards and get himself another penalty, and then that would be more of an issue for him. It would still require Kin Long Lee to find something like 10 seconds to get back onto the tail of Lawrenson, which I don't think he can do. But look at Maulana now into map 1, so he's saved enough fuel and he's now properly in attack mode, but he has to make sure this pass is a clean one.
And he's got 4 3/4 minutes in which to do it. He doesn't need to do it. There's an element here of Maulana needing to pick his battles, but the racer in him, double winner this year, the only driver to win twice within Pro, wants to find a way by. In the AM competition, we've had a different winner every time out. That's set to change here, because Mia Rose leads Philippa Boquida. Both have been winners. Kelvin Chen third has yet to be an AM winner. But as far as Pro is concerned, you've got Charles Fessera leading the race outright, but yet to stop. And he's running out of time with only 4 minutes on the clock, and Maulana now is all over Kin Long Lee like a rash.
I think he should be more sensible. Oh, he's gone back down to map 2 again. That's interesting. So he's kind of using his map settings as like an overtake button. So he's switching it to map 1 when he needs that extra punch and power, and then switching back to map 2 when he doesn't feel like, especially through the first sector of the lap. There we go, back to map 1 to give him a little bit more punch down towards Spoon, where you could slot it up the inside, but he chooses against it. Where he can't overtake, he's switching back to map 2. So it does mean that he may still be marginal on fuel. And these Mercedes, I think we saw last time out, somebody cruising around to the flag because he'd run out of fuel.
That's right. Because I was thinking about, as you were describing the engine map, like a push to pass, but he can't go push to pass against Carl Peterson. So I'll rephrase that. You're right, it is like a sort of boost element. So comes up now out of 130R down to the Casio triangle, brake late. There is a gap on the inside, but he doesn't go for it there. Right, left,
the series
right
in the pits, and Maulana was running. Sorry, not Maulana. Kin Long Lee was running with Thesera before the pits. So let's see if Thesera comes back out. Where is he? There he is.
There he is.
I think
James in as well.
Yeah, Thesera's going to lose out to the two Mercedes and Ryan Houlihan as well in the McLaren. So that's not worked out. Once again, Thesera's race unravels at the end.
Yeah, again, absolutely right. He flatters to deceive, so that's going to put him into 8th place. And also, it will now confirm Maulana third in class, lead second. Andrew Lawrenson's going to win Pro, seemingly make the point for the last time. That's enough to give Maulana the championship. So now, why go for it? You're not going to be able to win the race. You're not going to be able to win the class. You've done what you need to do, Andika. Sit tight, bank the point, win the championship. Don't make a mess of this.
I mean, even if he did and gets another drive-through penalty or spins out, and even if he retires out of the race, Kin Long Lee still needs to win. And he's not going to do that because Lawrenson is strong ahead in his own piece of track. He does have Kelvin Chen 1.7 seconds back from him, but they're in different classes. So Lawrenson can be very, very kind of secure in his position, and Kin Long Lee's not going to touch him. So we saw Lawrenson take a victory, I think the first round of the
Laguna, I think it was, that Andrew Lawrenson won. It was Carl Peterson that won at Monza with Joseph de Jesus, who we've not really seen since, winning the Pro class, but he finished third in the race. That was the real surprise, that the AMs came on strong so late. But we've got a minute and change on the clock, and Andika Maulana it is then, on his toes again, trying to find a way up alongside Kin Long Lee. Does not need to be doing it, but he wants to show the racer instinct in him, if it were in any doubt. Mia Rose, in the meantime, is still on target to win outright, as they're up the escape road goes Raleigh, his Audi. That's one way of getting out of the way of the quicker cars, isn't it? On to the last lap then now for this battle in Pro, and it means that Mia Rose is already around the last lap, and not only has she got ahead on the pit stop to Filippo Bocquida, but has maintained that gap, 2.4 seconds. Last lap of the race then, and we now need to start looking at how this is going to affect things within the championship. Mia Rose for a win in the class Filippo Bocquida second is enough to give Filippo Bocquida the AM championship, and Andika Maulana on target for the Pro championship. There is Mia Rose, but a really impressive job done, and so much of the win here was down to the pit stop. So there is Mia Rose turning through, and the Aston Martin looking good for the win. So female drivers first and second. There's always been a good history of quick, competitive female racers within GT racing, the likes of Lillian Brenner that won the Spa 24 Hours, Claudia Hertgen, very, very competitive GT racer. And we have the Coupe des Dames, unofficially heading the way of Mia Rose, but it is going to be a race win for Mia Rose and a championship win for Filippo Bocquida then in this final round of the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship presented by Tarmac Works. Mia Rose wins at Suzuka. Filippo Bocquida wins the championship within AM, and Andika Maulana is going to finish in 6th place overall, but that will be enough to give Maulana the Pro Championship. He's going to have one last roll of the dice to try to get up alongside Kin Long Lee to make the pass as they come towards the line. He's not going to be able to do it, but that is enough for Andika Maulana to take the Pro category within the championship at the end of another fascinating hour. Andika Maulana then it is who comes through to score the victory and to win the championship, but of course the Pro class in the race won by Andrew Lawrenson after that very early pit stop. So a great job done. Mia Rose, the race winner. Filippo Bocquida second. Andrew Lawrenson third. Andrew Lawrenson wins Pro in the race. And Filippo Bocquida and Andika Maulana are new champions.
What an exceptional first opening race of finals day for the TCL GT World Challenge Asia, presented by Tarmac Works. Ben Constanduris alongside me. Incredible racing, and Maulana made that a little bit more difficult than it needed to be, but a great end result.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, Kin Long Lee just didn't have the performance of Maulana, even with all the various issues that Maulana had. And obviously driving a Mercedes that was never going to be the ultimate car for that particular race with its fuel issues, but he did enough. I was a bit worried at the end that he was going to be a little bit too aggressive with Kin-Lon Lee and we might see another penalty, but thankfully he kept his nerve and calmed his excitement, as we've seen in the interviews, and basically did enough. But what an entertaining race outside of that.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic watching in between while I was watching yourself and David. Just the tension, the way he came back from that drive-through was brilliant. And Filippo Bakida as well at the front of the field, wrapping up the AM Championship in convincing style, despite Mia Rose sneaking through right at the end.
What's your theory on that? Because I genuinely can't understand how Mia Rose was able to jump Bakida. Bakida was very strong in the first part of the race. And suddenly, Rose was 10 seconds, had found 10 seconds.
Yeah, fantastic performance. We'll find out, of course, everybody at home. We'll be interviewing the race winners and presenting that next week. So do stay tuned to the social media accounts for that one. But the Pro and AM sim racers have been fantastic. And now, Ben, it's time for the real drivers. But let's have a quick look at the standings before we get into that one. So here you can see the real driver standings. We've got Kevin C at the head of the championship, ahead of Billy Carl Fung Lo. This is going to be another incredibly tense race. We've seen so far this season in Pro and AM of the real drivers some interesting racing out on circuit. We've seen contact, we've seen fights between different cars at the head of the field, so anything could still happen over the course of this next 60-minute race. If we look at the Pro driver standings, Division Padayache, that had such a strong start to the season, leads the championship by quite a considerable margin over Melvin Moe behind. But again, just reiterating, the real drivers, these are not seasoned esports sim racing professionals. They do this for a living in real life, Ben, and because of that, the skills transferring well into the virtual space, but it still opens up an element where anything could really happen.
Yeah, it does always provide us with great entertainment and just a little bit more variables within the whole field, to be honest. The guys at the front of the field, though, they're pretty close to what we've just seen from our sim competitors, but the guys a bit further down do certainly struggle somewhat. Interesting note, Aaron Borg, who actually I think was on pole the last 2 rounds of our championship, not here. He wasn't, I don't think, able to get part of the championship battle anyway, but he won't be taking part today.
No, unfortunately not. And of course, we couldn't interview them for that same reason. But we did speak to Rudy Dietrich. He's the head of BMW Motorsport Esport to talk about his impressions of the world of virtual racing. Hello, Rudy. Thank you very much for joining us today. Now, you're head of the BMW Motorsport Sim Racing Department. What exactly does that entail?
Well, we are approaching sim racing from a really 360-degree perspective. So we're trying to get the cars that BMW Motorsport operates in reality also into lots of platforms. And we're trying to participate at events, have our own events executed, also develop hardware. So lots of stuff going on.
Fantastic. Now, sim racing is becoming increasingly more popular. The growth has been exceptional. What does that mean for BMW Motorsport, and how interested are you in being involved in this series?
Well, for us, we identified sim racing as an equal pillar within our motorsport program, and we really treat it like any other category that we are participating. So for us, it's a serious pillar in our motorsport program, and hence we're also using all our assets and resources to contribute and participate.
Fantastic. Now, the TCL Asia Esports series has been incredibly competitive so far. How important is it to BMW to be represented in the Asia region and worldwide through a medium like sim racing?
Well, BMW is an international worldwide brand, and therefore also we want our motorsport program to be present all around the globe. And I think it's a very, very good championship, and it's as you said, it's really growing and increasing popularity. So it's really good to be there and have fans all around the world to cherish and appreciate the BMW M cars.
Fantastic. And final question from me, is there anything exciting happening with BMW Motorsport in sim racing going forward that you can tell us about?
There's a couple of announcements coming very, very soon around these days. And beyond those announcements, which I can't talk about too much yet, I can assure you that we will keep pushing throughout next year and have multiple, probably reasonably impacting news to come.
Fantastic. Brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
And Ben, it is absolutely fantastic to see such a prestigious brand like BMW so heavily invested in the world of sim racing and esports from a hardware and a team perspective as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Really interesting approach from BMW. They announced a couple of days ago that they're supporting 4 different teams within sim racing, so they'll have their own subdivision, with G2 Esports being their focus for ACC. They're also going to be running a competition, a hot lap time attack competition on ACC over next year as well. Really cool to see them kind of looking outside of looking at ACC as a platform to participate with. And of course, they have their massive Sim Racing Live event, which happened actually on Saturday. And they'll continue to push that and push that further. And really, if you look outside of BMW, I don't feel like there's very many other manufacturers that have the same level of presence. A department of 4 or 5 different people simply working in BMW Motorsport on sim racing. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fabulous to see. And of course, we've got BMW represented in this series as well. So let's have a look at the entry list of who's going to be taking part in the Real World Pro and Am sim drivers for this upcoming round. Once again, we've got a collection of names that you will recognise, hardy viewers of previous races from this series, including Dan Wells in the Lamborghini once again. Showed a lot of pace. Dan is not in championship contention, but is certainly due to be one of the front runners in this upcoming race. Our championship contenders are all present, apart from, unfortunately, Aaron Borg, who cannot make this round for personal reasons. And we've got a few drivers that you'll recognise from the World of Asia Region GT racing. There's some former World Touring Car Championship drivers as well, and many big names that we've seen competing at the sharp end of this grid. And Ben, this is the very final run out for our real drivers. I think it's fair to say, week on week, we've seen an improvement in driving standards, but arguably, Suzuka is going to be the biggest test as well.
They know it from the Charity Cup, and they know it from racing there for real. You know, these guys haven't had the opportunity to do any real racing over in Asia. Unfortunately, it's been difficult to run the GT World Challenge Asia Series this year, whereas obviously the European season pretty much ran to the eventual plan, and so many other of the championships have been able to run. But so the Asia region has really missed out on the competition, and therefore all of these guys are using this, treating this like they would have done real world competition, enjoying the competition.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. So, for one final time, the race is about to begin. Over to Ben Constanduras and Mr. David Addison.
For the last time, let's go racing then as the cars work their way around the rolling lap here with Dan Wells starting on pole position, Melvin Moe second, Davishan Padayachi third on the grid, Kevin Say fifth, and his championship rival Billy Lowe 22nd. So Kevin Say has got very much the advantage as far as the AM fight is concerned. It's relatively straightforward, this. Two can win in either of the two classes, but Dan Wells is going to be the spoiler in the pack, a little bit like we saw last time out at Spa. Dan not really in for the championship, but he can take points away, Ben Constantiouris, from those that are fighting for the crown.
Yeah, Dan was on pole for the Charity Cup race back in August and eventually didn't manage to get a result from that race. But we saw him was on pole position and so he did manage to get a result. He really needs to get a result in this one. He's very, very well known for his sim racing company and skills, and so this is the time to shine.
Absolutely so, as the cars then now make the run ready for this rolling start up towards the timing line, up towards the lights. Now we've got a race in isolation. This is always one of the fascinations at the end of a championship season. You've got the race to look at, but you've also got the championship fight going on around. And there is number 7, Melvin Moe, who comes into this 7 points back from the man right with him on the grid, Division Padayachee. So again, you've got to Melvin Moe's got to go for the win, yes, but he also needs quite a few people to get up past Padayachee, who was the driver that scored the wins in the first 2 races of the year. Melvin Moe won at Silverstone. It really is going to be very interesting indeed to see how it pans out between those two. Now we are at 5:45 local time within the simulation, so it's cooler temperatures and the light will improve, but of course track temperature will go up. And the guys were talking about how driving standards have been improving amongst our real racers. Well, let's see if they are famous last words, because quite often the first lap of the race has been a bit leery, and the man that seems to have copped for it time and time again is Evan Chen. Fingers crossed he can keep out of trouble this time as they come up towards the Casio Triangle and we get set to go racing. This final round of the TCL. Well, I was just thinking that, yes, and hoping that wasn't really a big issue, that it was going to be more the way drivers' internet was working. But I think now they have got themselves in place, so it looks a bit tidier, doesn't it? The last round of the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, presented by Tarmac Works, about to get underway. Dan Wells on pole position, with him at the front, Melvin Moe, Division Padayachee, and then on the outside of the second row, Louis Pret ahead of Kevin Say, Matt Solomon, who went so well at Laguna Seca. Then you've got the Thong brothers, Sean Tong ahead of brother Jasper Tong. Kang Ling lines up 9th, Evan Chen is 10th. They make the run up towards the rolling start now. Dan Wells on pole position in the Lamborghini. He's a little bit in advance of the rest of them. It's the race director going to be happy with that. Let's see, because the lights now go green and we go racing. Melvin Moe straight away moves across to defend from Division Padayachee, and there's contact in the background with 2 cars, 3 cars involved. On they go. Dan Wells hits the front, and Padayachee has dropped to place, has he not? Because Louis Pret up round the outside of him, so the Ferrari goes third.
We've seen Louis Pret the last couple of races. He's the European series.
Okay.
He's setting his head down now.
Nanling
Here
off
in
the road. And Dan Wells leads the pack. There was more drama as well as the cars came up towards the snake for the first time. So they got around the first corner okay, and then a few more went off the road, but we'll pick those up as they're going through is Melvin Moe. Now the timing graphic has got a little bit distorted because they are shown as being a long way down the field. They are, of course, 1 and 2. So something strange has happened within the system. Up they come then towards the Dunlop corner, and Melvin Moe trying to get away from the opposition. But Padayachee, look, has dropped back into 5th place. So ignore Nan Lin. I think it was him hitting the wall that rather confused life. So Division Padayachee is 5th. That means he's dropped places. Now, Matt Solomon is one of the AMs, and he's all over the back of Louis Pret. So you score points in your class. So even though Padayachee has lost a place to Solomon, that doesn't affect his points haul. What it does mean, though, is that he's not close enough to the pro category to fight for position right now. So Louis Pret storms up towards the 130R corner. Dan Wells leads the way right now within 2nd place. Melvin Moe there, up on the inside goes Solomon, and that oh so nearly forces Louis Pret wide and off the racetrack. Solomon tries to come up to the outside line now, look, as they drop down towards the chicane. But Matt Solomon then, the former Carter, Formula 3 racer, China GT star, up behind European Ferrari champion Louis Pret as they come to the line, but Dan Wells leads the way at the end of the opening lap of the race.
Paddy needs to be super careful about those two fighting each other. Where is Paddy gone? He's falling further and further down the field. Is he in the pits? Or has he made an error? We wait for the timing screens, but something up with Paddy there.
Well,
yeah, he made an error.
Yeah, he ran wide at the first corner. His internet's not good again, and it was the internet that spat him out last time, was it not? Have a look at that little yellow graphic. That's already on lap 2 of the race, looking pretty unstable. And it was a disconnect that was his retirement in the last round. So I wonder whether Paddy is struggling in that respect as well. But you're right, he's been losing place after place on the opening lap.
Yeah, he was tucked right behind that battle between Solomon and Pret, and I wonder whether he got caught out, because I was saying he needs to be careful not to get caught out by them because they were squabbling so hard. But unfortunately, he then didn't reappear on the next camera shot and has dropped down to 8th position. So there he is, the black machine, and you've got another 3 cars squabbling ahead of him.
This is this problem that we've been talking about all championship, about trying to keep out of trouble or bank points. You think, well, I'll just avoid a battle here and not go off, and then suddenly you've lost 2 or 3 places and you're in this really nervous state of racing. So now Division Paddy needs to regroup and he needs to focus on the job in hand. So he's running 8th, which is 6th in the class, and that would mean that he would lose the championship to Melvin Moe by 3 points as things stand. So he's got to get a wriggle on here and buy back at least a couple of places.
Plenty of time left though, only 5 minutes into this race. I think Dan Wells for the moment has control of this one, and Melvin Moe in his position of the championship needs to be careful not to get involved too much with Dan Wells, and can let him scamper off into the distance. Doesn't necessarily need that win, although Moe comes into the championship 7 points behind, so he is the man with the pressure, I suppose, more than Paddy.
It's knowing when to hold and when to fold, isn't it? Now there, 999 is Billy Lowe, and he has got to get on with this because he is currently running 3rd in class, but he's a long way down the order, 14th, whereas his championship rival, Kevin Say, is 5th. So Lowe has got a huge amount of traffic to have to work his way past. Sean Tong in this battle pack, all over the back of Evan Chen, who has managed to keep out of trouble this time. He's been the magnet for everybody, race after race. If there's an accident brewing, he has been involved in it. Rarely is it his fault, but he's kept out of trouble early on. We've got an early stopper as well. Kachun Ma has gone into the pit lane, one of the newcomers for this last round, and Ma goes for the pits early doors.
Yeah, so Taniguchi, I think, was the second man that we saw in the wall on the start-finishing straight. He's retired out of the race, and then Douglas Koo, Inichan An, Hideyoko Yasuka and Matthew Marsh, I think, all went to the pits on lap 1. Whether that was a strategic thing or whether that was because they had damage and got caught up, I'm not sure. But another sort of sad result for Matthew Marsh, who we've enjoyed watching, and he's had glimmers of pace for his team Laundry House, but unfortunately is at the tail end of the field right now.
One that has stopped early also is Antares Au with his Porsche, former Carrera Cup Asia racer, as their Tong gets through the traffic. So Antares Au is 23rd. That's the leading stopper early doors. Now, where's Paddy got to? He's still stuck in 8th place, as there Louis Pret comes under attack once more from Matt Solomon, who lines up for the inside at 130R. Can't do it there. You've got to be so brave to make that pass and make it a good one. And Matt Solomon couldn't quite do it, so he slots back in as the cars dive down towards the Casio Triangle.
I'm surprised that he's even trying there. I think I would be staying under the rear wing of the car in front if I've got enough downforce to run that close, and then trying to attack in the braking zone of the chicane. I think there would be more probability of making that pass stick than going up the inside of a place where there isn't really a braking zone.
Now, Division Paddy had a coming together on the opening lap with 67, which is Jasper Tong, and Tong is being given a stop-go penalty of 10 seconds for causing that collision. So that's part of your answer as to where Paddy had gone to. There was an incident. It wasn't necessarily his doing, but he was on the wrong end of a nudge for the BMW of Jasper Tong.
And he's crawling over brother Sean now, trying to find a way through. Very close to the rear end of that Audi, just at the bottom of shot. Evan Chen was the man who took victory in the Charity Cup race in August here, and actually for me, should have really been in the championship fight, but had a couple of issues, massive crash at Silverstone, and that is why he's not been able to really stay in the championship hunt. But in terms of pace, outright pace, he's one of the best ones out there.
Go along with that, but Dan Wells, who is a very accomplished driver, Dan who's raced pretty much anything there is to race in the Asian market, having run out of funds in Europe, he leads the way, 1.9 seconds to the good. But after racing as far as Formula Renault in the UK, he went to China, won in Formula Pilota. He was the Asian Formula Renault champion. He's raced in Asian Le Mans. He's raced in Chinese touring cars, GT4, Formula 4, Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Not bad for somebody that started off washing dishes in the family's roadside restaurant, but a really handy racer is Dan Wells. And while it's great to see him doing so well in the Asian market, Ben, it's a shame, in a sense, that he's not better known in Europe, because he'd be a big asset to a GT team in European racing.
Yeah, absolutely. But making his business known over in Asia, and I think he was over. The reason why he missed a couple of races was he was over in Europe during the kind of autumn time, driving for certain teams and doing some testing. So has still got interest in Europe, although his sim building business from Europe to Hong Kong and Singapore.
Well, now he's putting money where mouth is, so to speak, both as a driver and as a sim person, because he leads by 2 seconds. He's getting away from Melvin Moe. Now, Kang Ling has been another driver this year who has been there or thereabouts. He's had a second place as his best result of the championship season, which came at Silverstone. What can he do now to find a way past Dervish Padiachi? Well, Padiachi cannot afford to give away places, can he?
It's amazing how different their racing lines are going up through the S's there. Very different lines taken from the Mercedes and from the Audi, and actually all of these 6 cars that are queuing up behind. They're not queuing up behind Evan Chen, they're coming up behind Kevin C, I think. So it's C that doesn't seem to really have the pace right now.
And he is second within the AM class, as you rightly say. Yes, he is the cork in the bottle, isn't he, in the Mercedes then. So 38, Kevin Day for Craft Bamboo Racing. Somebody who started off racing in Europe, in fact, in the German Volkswagen Polo series in the real world. But he is now significant in a sense in all of this, because he's second in the AMs. He's the cork in the bottle. He's losing touch with the leading quartet. And, of course, Padiachi is stuck in that second wave. So he can't make progress forward. And that means, Ben, that he's losing time relative to championship rival Melvin Moe.
Yeah, exactly. So Melvin Moe in second position picks up 73 points right now, whereas Padiachi is 6th in class, correct me if I'm wrong, and that would be 70 points. So Moe would still have a 3-point, would take a 3-point advantage, but it would be very, very close between the two of them. Darrell Young with a stop-go penalty, 10 seconds, so he's been a very naughty boy as well, down in 14th position.
That was for an incident with Aaron Lim in the BMW, as Evan Chen gets through the traffic, coming over the timing line. So we've got drive-throughs coming now for, who is that? Number 63, Hang Min. He's got a drive-through. 10-second stop-go for Darrell Young. Division Padiachi goes through, still running 8th on the racetrack, 6th in class. Still not enough to take the championship. And life is tough, because he's got other pro drivers ahead that he needs to find a way past. So the BOP is such that he can't really get close enough to attack right now.
All of these penalties, by the way, are going to be helping Billy Lowe, who's at the moment 4th in class. He is the only championship rival in the AM category to Kevin C. And 2 cars will be removed out of his way, including one of his AM rivals. So that will put him up into 3rd in class. He does need to get ahead of Kevin C to have any chance of taking victory in the championship. And there's a lot of pro cars between him and C. But while C is holding all these guys up, Billy Lowe may be able to join the party. At the moment, he is actually caught up behind Darrell Young, so he could do with Darrell taking that penalty as soon as possible. Indeed
so. Jasper Tong has just gone for the pits as well to get his 10-second stop-go out of the way. Evan Chen in 6th place then in the Laundry House Porsche, keeping Sean Tong behind him, and Division Padiachi is still there in 8th place. But right now, he hasn't got the answer to how to prise open any doors. If anything, he's perhaps waiting to see what Tong can do about Chen, and that could be his chance. But it is Tong that makes a move, and he's able to capitalise on whatever happens ahead of him.
Very, very close. be sensible where you choose to pass all the way down here. Very defensive work from Evan Chen, and gosh, look at the overspeed from Sean Tong around the outside. Maybe that will push the Porsche wide. The place to do it is into the chicane, but is he close enough? No, he's not. And Padiachi chooses again just to stay out of the trouble. It's very frenetic. It's not the place you want to be when you're fighting for a championship in such close confinement with other drivers.
So blasting past the pit, Sean Tong, very experienced Audi racer in the real world, whether it's in one-make championships or in GT3, and he goes to the outside of Evan Chen. Evan good in Porsches, good in Lamborghinis, winner of his class in the World Finals last year at Jerez, and comes then now onto the power, into the snake. Dervish Padiachi is all over the back of Sean Tong. Tong looking for a way past Chen, and Dan Wells is getting away up front. Melvin Moe, as Ben suggested early on, may well be happy to just let him go because he's on target to take a championship if things stay as they are. Trouble is, Padiachi can gain ground. Melvin Moe can't if he needs to gain more points because Dan Wells is quicker and he's getting away. So Melvin Moe is a bit stuck in a sense. He's rather dependent on what happens further back affecting Padiachi's race. His race is almost now decided.
Yeah, 73 points is kind of his maximum unless Dan gets himself caught up with the back marker, which you know it's entirely possible. As we found out, especially across this season in these pro races, they are a little bit more unpredictable. And Dan got caught out last time by a slower car ahead of him. I think it was Darrell O'Young, actually. He'd come out the pits and was driving a lot slower. And Wells basically tried to pass him, to go for a gap, thinking that Darrell would move over and that gap would appear. And it just didn't. It should have done. But in a world where the drivers are not as experienced in sim world as Dan, he's kind of was making assumptions that didn't actually happen. So he's still got to be very careful when he gets coming through the traffic to make sure he does it cleanly.
Yeah, he got a penalty, didn't he, for that incident, which was one of the reasons that the race win was not his. He was second to Aaron Borg, with Kang Ling third last time out, but Dan Wells already over the timing line. And that's Padiachi off the road, and he's going to lose a place to Kang Ling, and that's even worse for him as far as the championship is concerned. And now he goes for the pit lane ban. So Dervish Padiachi down the pit lane. I'm afraid Padiachi's race unravelling a little bit here. He hit that brake board as he came into the pit, so problems for Padiachi continue. Now we need to see where he's going to be when he comes back out. Has he got any damage after the earlier incidents? Is that why the car is lacking pace? But that seemed to be a mistake going down towards the Casio triangle. We'll have to wait and see if there's any race control message that goes along that, just to suggest that he might have had an assist, but from what we could see on the pictures, it looked like it was a mistake from Padiachi, and it's all unravelling this. He's going from bad to worse. Now, he is the leading stopper. Where is that going to help him, if at all, late race?
Well, let's just wait for the timing screens to sort themselves out, because sometimes they're a bit slow. Before Darrell came into the pits, Antara Zhao was the best stopper, and he was actually 20 seconds clear of Matthew Marsh, who was second of the stoppers. But now Padiachi comes to the first sector of the lap, 13th position it says he is on our timing screen. He needs to clear that before we can confirm that that is his position. And it does.
And there it is, confirmed. So he's still ahead of the number 76 Mercedes of Leona Chen, the Legacy Racing Team Malaysia entry. 44 minutes on the clock. Matt Solomon, heading the AMS, deserves another big cheer, just like he did at Laguna Seca. He was unlucky not to win there, but here he is running third, heading the AM category. He's not really fighting for that in the championship, sadly, but he is showing how well he can go in a race.
Yeah, and unlike we saw in our sim category, the AMS and the pros here have been decided by the organisers rather than the AMS qualifying through. So very much a more stable grid. And I guess it's kind of been decided on the amount of experience on the sims that these drivers have had. Here's Evan Chen.
On the inside of Sean Tong, that's Tong trying to get the place away from Evan Chen. On the outside line at turn one, couldn't do it. Evan Chen sticks out his elbows, and Kang Ling, look, in the Lamborghini, is getting closer and closer all the while. well, the race leader for Lamborghini. It's Mercedes second, third, Ferrari fourth, Mercedes fifth, then Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, Mercedes, Lamborghini to round out the top 10.
Yeah, and these guys were stuck behind Kevin C for a while, but it doesn't look as though it's now Evan Chen who's more of the cork than Kevin, who's maybe turned his fuel mixture up, maybe not saving as much fuel. Remember, just like we saw in the sim race, these guys will also in the Mercedes need to save fuel at certain points to get their cars to the end. So that is Melvin Moe, that's Matt Solomon, that's Kevin C, and they may choose not to and therefore have a longer pit stop by refueling the car. That's the other way of doing it. Use a bit too much fuel, because we know that they've got to do a stop, and then actually refuel. So let's see, maybe that will be one of those confusing things that we've seen before, where somebody loses time in the pits and we don't know why.
Matthew Marsh goes through and looks to try to gain a place at the expense of Felipe de Souza, who runs out wide. So de Souza off the road and back on again. The Macanese Am slots in behind Matthew Marsh, who is a pro. Matthew's done quite a lot of racing over the time. Maserati Trofeo race winner at the British Grand Prix one year, and now sets off in pursuit of, who's the next target going to be? Philip Tang, is it not? With the Lamborghini further up the road. You've also got the Bentley to keep an eye on, but I think that car is a lap down. But Kang Ling, as has always been the case in a GT car, showing better than he did when he was a Formula 3 racer, and he's got himself up past Sean Tong as well, so he's making progress forward all the time.
Yeah, I wonder whether Sean Tong, by attacking, has actually compromised himself. BMW versus Lamborghini here. Adli Fong we haven't seen too much of, and that's Tengu Lei going all the way around the outside and making that move stick.
Indeed so, up into the top 10 now. Padiachi is still in 13th place, but still the best of the stoppers as we get towards the end of the first third of the race. And in the background there, you see number 3 of Dominic Ang, that very spectacularly coloured Porsche, the green and grey, but that lost time early on, so that's another car that's quite a long way down the pecking order.
This is the first of our BMWs. And Adli Fong hasn't really adapted to sim racing as much as, you know, in terms of real world, you'd say he's one of the most famous of our grid in terms of what he's done, his performances, where he's raced in single-seaters as well as GTs, but he definitely hasn't adapted to sim racing in the way that we've seen him jump around in real world.
And a big lose there, the Audi off the road. That is Kat Chun Ma, the STS Motorsport crew Audi of the Chinese driver, was 20th, ain't there anymore. That gives Aaron Lim a chance to move up one place, and Aaron Lim's BMW comes now up towards the timing line. 40 minutes on the clock, but Lim up one spot.
Big lose of the rear end there, very surprising, kind of threw the car in, and obviously it didn't stick and the back end came around. But of course all of these GT3 cars with traction control and ABS brakes, and they are able to play around with the amount of each that they utilise. They can completely turn it off, but the cars are designed for traction control and ABS, and therefore if you do turn them off, it can be quite completely off. It can be a bit of a handful. The pro drivers in the real world will turn them down to as little as possible without turning them completely off. Someone like Dan Wells probably is doing that in this car as well.
Yes, that car under the banner of Lippert Motorsport, which is one of the very experienced Lamborghini Super Trofeo teams, and a team that has run in GT Asia and the China GT series. So Dan Wells is up front and having to start now thinking about the traffic, those that were delayed early on. But he's absolutely stormed away from Melvin Moe, hasn't he? Division Padiachi still in 13th overall, not making progress. That's 10th in class, so he's on the cusp of not scoring if he drops back any further.
Really love these internal views, gives you a great sense of what the real drivers would see and what the virtual drivers are seeing as well. They might be sitting a bit further back in the sims, depending on what kind of screens they've got. So some drivers with virtual reality headsets, so they are able to turn their head around the cockpit and really look to the left-hand side extremes and right-hand side extremes in the way that you can't do if you've got a single screen or indeed a triple screen being 3 different screens, 2 to give you the side views and 1 to give you the front view, or as being developed by various manufacturers now, kind of the bendy, the wraparound screens that are one single screen, but they're curved. So different options, And those are the kind of the variables that all of these drivers will have, as well as different sets of pedals and steering wheel, which will give them different levels of feel.
Indeed so, and they've all learnt about sim racing, some perhaps with a little bit of experience of it, but it's become a very important way of going racing within the Asian market this year. And the positives to take out of it are that it's given us a great championship, and it's really showcased what sim racing is all about. There is the driver that was the first of the stoppers, really, Antares Au, and he is 15th, but no longer the best of the stoppers because he has fallen back behind Division Pagliacci.
And the key thing about the market is if you take esports globally, not just motorsports, but all the different computer games that you can play online, multiplayer, and the tournaments where you can win lots of money, Asia is number one, the capital of gaming and esports in the whole world. You've got big competitions in America, but actually a lot of the players that play in America will come from the Asian market. So for esports to be represented over there as well, in terms of sim racing, it's very, very important to have. And it's great to see that in our sim category there are so many great drivers, and also in our real world it's being adopted more and more, and it's a very, very good place for SRO as a market and a promoter to place themselves and see how much traction they can get out of the Asian region for perhaps running more of these events in the future.
Yes, I mean, people now with the investment into the kit have got a desire to use it, haven't they? And we're seeing more and more sim racing teams spreading up, and it's a way of enticing people into motorsport, even if it's not in the real world. It's a way of doing it, but some will make that crossover from sim to real. Others are doing it real to sim, as we've seen and we've discussed over previous race events. There is Melvin Moe working his way through the traffic. Now, this is the man that's at the moment the champion-elect, is he not? Because he's running second. He's outscoring Division Pagliacci quite nicely. And as we have one or two more drivers to cycle through pit stops, we're approaching the halfway point now, not that far away from the 30-minute mark. And Melvin Moe getting on with the job nicely as the Mercedes comes out of the chicane. He's not forcing the fight against Dan Wells. He knows he's not really racing against Dan for points. And Melvin Moe, an experienced GT racer, comes through then now over the timing line once again. He's 4.6 seconds back from Dan Wells, but he is comfortably ahead of Division Pagliacci right now.
25 seconds lost on this lap for Sean Tong, down to 13th position now behind Pagliacci, so he's had an issue somewhere as Erwin Chen holds off very, very aggressively. Ling trying to go around the outside, it's not going to work. He could get the switch back to the inside for turn 2, but it's not quite close enough. So something's happened for Sean Tong on that last lap. He's not pitted, so perhaps was... Oh no, he has pitted, sorry. Maybe it was him coming out the pits, but it's if it was a very slow out lap.
Okay, which explains, yes, why he's behind Pagliacci. Billy Lowe, in the meantime, is still chipping forward, isn't he, to get up with Kevin Say, but he still needs Kevin to have a problem, because it's not just places he's got to think about, it's the gaps between. And look, you've got a 15-second margin within that group. You've got a 9.5. He's just a long way back in terms of the time. Kang Ling is hard at work in the meantime, chasing after Evan Chen. Ling is in 7th place here. He's on the power once again. And the Lamborghini that is operated under the Climax Racing banner comes then a little bit nearer, maybe under braking to the back of the Porsche. What's really heartening here is to see Evan Chen having a good, solid run, keeping out of trouble, or people not driving into him. The best result he's had all year is 9th, but actually he's had the pace to go a lot better than that.
Yeah, I think at Silverstone he was on the front row of the grid, which was his downfall, because he was placed into the wall. He didn't get the temperature into the tyres. Oh, losing the rear end of the Porsche just fractionally there, catches the slide. Great to see how the cars are represented by moving around on the road. It's one of the big things that's kind of real versus virtual, but it has given Kang Ling a great slipstream. I have a feeling that Porsche has got very little straight line speed. He might have set it up for the corners here, and therefore he's got good traction throughout the corners, unless he breaks it. But in terms of the straights, he does feel like a bit of a sitting duck.
All right, let's see. He's good out of the slow corner there. So he's got decent acceleration as the back of the car sits down, doesn't it? The weight over the rear accelerates them. But Ling's car is good, of course, on the aero. Look, it's almost dwarfed by that rather more bulbous shape of the Porsche. And so Kang Ling's aero-friendly Lamborghini lines up to have a go on the outside line into turn one. This is brave, brave stuff, and he won't do it there. Evan Chen hangs onto the place, but you saw how quick in a straight line the Lamborghini was. But Kang Ling picks his battle, slots back in, and will have another go.
I think basically Evan Chen has set the Porsche up so he's relatively stable through these S-bends at the start of the lap, because you really don't want the rear end breaking away from you and overheating the rear tyres. So he's got lots and lots of mechanical or downforce through the first part of the lap, but then that is really compromising his speed down the long straights and allowing this Lamborghini, that obviously is the slipperiest of the lot, to get so much closer, even if the Lamborghini perhaps is a little bit sketchy because of its low downforce setup in the bigger braking zones. He's still able to, he was so far back, he's still able to get closer and closer, and if that Porsche breaks traction, then the Lamborghini has the opportunity. Nice fair racing though, for the two of them going through turn one with half the race still to go.
Yeah, good to see, wasn't it? And they're also not that far behind Kevin Say. Now, is Kevin Say doing the right thing here, thinking about points for the AM Championship, and a bit like Melvin Moe just driving his own race, or is he genuinely struggling for speed? That car, the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, upholding the team's honour, but you can see in the background Evan Chen trying to wriggle his way up past Kachun Ma's Audi. He's not that far behind, but again, they're in different classes, so do we need to worry about Kevin Say, or is he just driving within himself, banking those points, knowing how to win a championship?
Yeah, he was a little bit off the pace at the start of the race, wasn't he? When he had that big queue of cars. That queue seems to now have kind of fallen to the Porsche rather than Kevin Say. But remember, that Mercedes has to save fuel. So he does have to drive a little bit within himself. He can't be flat out because he needs to make sure the car can get to the end, unless he wants to make an extra long pit stop and do fuel in the pits. But God, Evan Chen so defending going down that first straight.
And Kang Ling again trying to work out whether to go to the inside or the outside. Well, the only other option is over the top of the Porsche, and he can't do any of those, so he's still stuck, still there in 7th place. Division Padiachi, Ben, if you can go inside the game, could you just have a look at lap times and see how he's doing relative to not only those around him, but perhaps also significantly Melvin Moe? Because for my money, Padiachi is a bit in no man's land here. He's not seeming to catch anybody, but he's not really being caught by anybody.
Well, he does have Adley Fong ahead of him, but by 7 seconds. So he's lapping quite significantly faster than Fong, than Tenku Lei, than Kang Ling. He's in the 201s. Most of the field ahead of him are in the 202s, apart from Matt Solomon and Dan Wells. So he's faster than Melvin Moe right now.
All right, okay, I'll take it all back then. So this is one of the situations, of course, slightly tricked by him being further down the order. We're not seeing him either for the moment, but his lap times are good, so he is therefore in real terms bringing down gaps, even if he's not yet gaining positions. Kang Ling is lining up to have another go at Evan Chen, thinks about the inside, but Evan Chen moves across on the inside there, and that forces Kang Ling way out wide up the curve, gives Chen another length advantage. Great battle between these two.
If that was, I mean, it is completely legal, but actually running a little bit wider through that first part has given him more of a slingshot out of the corner, just opens the corner up a little bit. Yellow flag's flying somewhere at the track, and this time he's going to try and go around the outside at 130R. That's certainly not going to happen. These guys are completely on the ragged edge, but it gives him the inside line, interestingly, into the chicane, and he gets it done.
So Kang Ling worked hard for that. He does go by up into 6th place then. We're into the second half of the race as well now, as the Lamborghini powers over the timing line. Dan Wells, the race leader, 5.5 seconds to the good. Louis Pret goes through. Now Pret all of a sudden has been caught by Kevin Say, hasn't he? So Louis Pret's Ferrari, 3rd in Pro, 4th overall, is being caught by the Mercedes, which also I suspect is being caught by now the charging Kang Ling.
I'm surprised that the game didn't pick up on that off track by making that move around the outside off the circuit, and I mean maybe not a pace advantage, but certainly an advantage of position by being off track. So maybe our race director will add something to it, but a little bit naughty to run that far wide. Of course, the wider you run, the more open you can have the steering wheel, and therefore the more speed you can carry. And as long you have this kind of compromise through there, is the further round you go, the longer distance, but the more speed, or you keep tighter and you're going slower, but you're covering less distance. So it seemed to work in the Lamborghini's favour that time.
Did indeed, didn't it? There you've got 38, then Kevin Say going up now through the hairpin, onto the power, makes the climb, and now accelerates off towards Spoon Curve. So as they loop their way around this fabulous circuit at Suzuka, Kevin Say, class leader within the championship, but it's a similar Mercedes leading the category at the moment. Matt Solomon doing a very good job indeed to be third overall. Matt's best race result, 5th this season. And there's the champion-elect, Melvin Moe. Right now, he is outscoring Division Pagliacci, and he is on target to take the crown, but we've still got half the race to go. Anything could yet happen, couldn't it?
Well, Melvin Moe's last lap time was a 2:01 dead. He comes across the line to do a 2:00.8. So actually, he has great pace when he doesn't have traffic in front of him. Pagliacci doesn't, I don't think, have traffic in front of him yet. He will do very soon, but he isn't anywhere near that kind of pace. So let's see when he comes across the line this time. He's still got about half a minute to go. But 2:00.19 was his last lap time, as I said, and that's a long way off a good Melvin Moe lap time. So look at his
case
dashboard. Yes, he is on map 2, so he is fuel saving. Traction control at 3 and ABS at 2, so quite low settings. Doing a lot with his own feet rather than relying upon the computers.
Just thinking a moment ago whether he was changing up quite early as well, all part of that fuel save.
That will also do a similar thing as well, which if he is, then his pace is very, very good, because he's one of the fastest men out on track, other than Dan Wells.
Well, they're going through is Kang Ling, who has now caught up to Kevin Say. So this battle is now going to take up attention, is it not? And Kang Ling doing, as we saw in previous rounds, a good job of upping his pace as the race wears on. So don't rule him out here of gaining more ground.
Soon going to have to be a bit concerned for Dividend Pagliacci. He's going to be in the clutches of Adley Fong, and he'll have to clear that traffic. I think that Fong is quite far back from Tenku Lei now, so it won't be a battle that he'll have to get past. It will just be one car, but he's only second and a half behind now, and so that will be potentially a bit more time lost once he tries to get past him.
Okay, now this is Kang Ling's view then, as the cars once more storm their way up towards the Casio Triangle. Is he going to be able to get close enough to think about a move this time? This is Pro on Am, don't forget. So through 130R, off goes Kang Ling, and into the barrier goes Kang Ling. Lost the back of it, around he went, and he's going to pick up damage there, and that would have done the tyres no good at all. Flat spots like you wouldn't believe, as Pagliacci there makes a move against Adley Fong, runs out wide, and the Mercedes rather cheekily tries to squeeze up the inside. Now that Mercedes is a lap back, number 63, that's the car of Heng Min, but Pagliacci finally seems to be making some progress now.
Yeah, good that he managed to clear Fong quickly, although a little bit aggressive on the hip and shoulder, and moves himself up into 9th position as the best of our pit stoppers, and has 14 seconds before he'll get anywhere near Tenku Lei. He's having to do a bit of defensive work though, isn't he, on Heng Min. Heng Min fancies to get past him.
Yeah, he does, although there Louis Pret is another quick driver worth keeping an eye to. He's now being chased by Kevin Say. Evan Chen is 5th. Matt Solomon has pitted, and Kang Ling has pitted as well. So possibly to check out the damage, maybe do a repair. There going through is Division Pagliacci, and the lap car of Heng Min tries to stay with him, runs out of road on the outside. But now, look, Pagliacci is up into 7th place overall, and he's the best of the stoppers. And now where does that put him in his class? That puts him 6th in Pro, doesn't it? So he, for that, would get 70 points. Melvin Moe is still on target for 73. It's still advantage Moe, but Pagliacci now looks to be pushing even harder.
Well, Matt Solomon came out of, is it 3rd or 4th position, and is definitely behind Pagliacci. By how much we won't know for a few more moments. But that means that Pagliacci could well be on the same part of the track as Melvin Moe once Melvin pits. He's going to be well up there. The gap to between Paddiacci and Matt Solomon is, do the maths, about 12 seconds. So Paddiacci is really in the box seat here. He could even be kind of in contention for the win.
Despite the dramas early on. Okay, so Paddiacci now, clear racetrack around him, heads up towards Spoon Curve. The next target for him is going to be the 213 BMW of Tengku Ezhen Lei. There is Adley Fong, who, having lost that place, is in 8th position. 23 minutes to go, brief yellow flag withdrawn as Sean Tong turns through in 9th, trying to recover. And there, 36, that is Matt Solomon, going ahead of the Audi of Billy Lowe. So that's the change for second within the AM class. Don't forget, Billy Lowe has yet to stop. So very definitely this is a Matt Solomon rout, isn't it? He's dominating within the class.
Yeah, and it does show that Billy Lowe in the Audi, and the Audi's not necessarily the favoured car around here, is really struggling. He has been able, he's certainly not qualified very well, but we have seen him elevate himself and have really solid, strong races, keeping out of trouble and getting a decent result by the end. But today it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. There's so many cars between himself and Kevin Say. Neither have pitted yet, and definitely, as you say, it gives Matt Solomon the advantage in terms of the race. But in terms of the championship, it's only between Say and Lowe, and there is a huge advantage to Say right now.
Louis Pretz into the pit lane, out of the leading group for the moment, the Ferrari driver. Dan Wells' advantage has come down a bit as well, from over 4 seconds to 3.7. That might be traffic, might have been a moment, but I suspect it's more likely to be traffic. This is Kevin Say's view for the moment. Clear real estate up the road ahead of him as he turns through that long corner at Spoon onto the power. Evan Chen is the man chasing after him, but Paddiacci is in 6th spot and still hunting down more paces and hunting down more points in all of this.
Those onboard views are so good. It just feels so real.
Yeah.
Sitting on board with the bugs and the dirt on the windscreen and the sun coming through. We're now 7 o'clock local time. We're on ×2 for our races today. We were supposed to start in the dark, but obviously the sun rises early at this time of year over in Japan, and so our calculations were a little bit off. And so we actually started the race with the sun already up.
Oh, well, you are in the land of the rising sun, you see. That's probably what tricked people. So there is Louis Pret. Late addition to the championship, but going well. And as the battles lower down take up attention, 72 there is Yuki Taniguchi, the video game developer, having a bit of a moment as he tries to keep the Lamborghini at bay. That's not a battle for position, I don't believe. That Lamborghini, for my money, is a lap back. So Taniguchi here, who's developed car-related games and also wrestling-related games, gets himself in a bit of strife there, doesn't he? Going through the Degner curve, gets off the road and back on again. But the Bentley, one car but one behind, is the real opposition. That's in the hands of Andrew Harrianto.
It looks like he's wrestling his car today. Really struggling. That's my first pun of the year, I think, actually, David. It's always rubs off on me when I'm commentating alongside you. And yeah, great character actually. He used to race in the World Touring Car Championship.
That's right, yeah.
Really great fun to have. But the board pulled him out of the World Touring Car Championship, worried about losing him or to injury. Obviously, knowing that World Touring Cars is very physical and lots of door knocking, so he had to pull out of that, which was a bit of a shame. And it's good to see that his board are now trusting him to be able to race in the real world, and also makes sense for him to be racing online, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, what better way to showcase your ability. So Taniguchi then is 24th overall right now as he comes down towards the Casio Triangle. And he has also yet to stop, but you can see that he was in trouble early on because he is 3 laps down. So he's clearly been in strife early doors, as there Billy Lowe comes under attack from the recovering Kang Ling. So despite his off, Ling is back in the race. He's up the inside. He's going to take the place off the Audi. The multicoloured R8 drops back. So Ling on a mission again.
Yeah, and Billy Lowe obviously feels like he's got no pace in that car. He tried to defend into the braking zone, and potentially he ran a bit deep because of the brakes, but he didn't really try and fight it at all. And a bit of a shame that he hasn't been able to fight and take it to Kevin C. There's not so many AM competitors in our field, and it has really been a bit of a one-horse race for Kevin C for most of the season, and it was only latterly where Billy Lowe managed to get himself into championship contention.
That's right, 2 wins each. So Kevin won the first 2, Billy won the most recent pair, but Kevin C has always seemingly had the upper hand. But right now, it does rather suggest that Audis are not the car to have. The best is 8th, Sean Tong. Then you've got Billy Lowe, who is down in 11th place. But the Audi's just not looking as quick here as, well, frankly, they need to be.
And when we were talking about manufacturers and manufacturers having sim departments, I don't think, and I might be incorrect here, I don't think Audi have a sim racing department at all. They might have a licensing department, and therefore the licensing department would sign off having this car in this series. But there's been so much more influence now from the motorsport departments of various different manufacturers in the performances of their cars on track. Porsche have a very strong motorsport esports department, as do BMW. Bentley have a smaller one, certainly in the European series, had quite an influence on that European championship. But someone like Audi, I don't think has any kind of relationship at all with sim racing. I may be wrong, but that could be, why the car is okay. The car is replicated incredibly well. The BOP is exactly what the SRO BOP is, but it just doesn't have those people at the back end kind of caressing it and pushing it forward.
Would not be surprised if that didn't come on board fairly soon, because if you think about Audi and its plans relative to, as there you see Matt Solomon get up the inside and go ahead of Sean Tong for 8th place, Audi restructuring its DTM involvement, pulling out of Formula E, going back into sports prototypes. It's almost like it's working through a list. Tick, tick, tick. Right, next on that list is esports. I'd be surprised if Audi did not get there. Why has Billy Lowe got a 30-second stop-go penalty? That is from the game, I think, not from race direction.
Yeah, so it's either that he's sped in pit lane. It does seem to be a very harsh penalty if you speed in pit lane. Stop-go 30 seconds is what we saw in the earlier race. Or it's that he's had multiple off-tracks and too much of an advantage. But, oh, dearie me, that's not very kind. Who was that going into the pits?
That was, I thought, Adley Fong being hit by Sean Tong. So that's one way of getting into the pit lane to do your stop. You forced in there by tapping the tail. So
I think he was trying to go in there anyway, because he was coming off the throttle, and that's kind of what caught the guys behind out, that he was coming in, and he just helped in a bit more. Right, well,
Jasper Tong has already had a penalty. I just wonder whether Sean Tong might not be looked at by the officials for that as well. So Adley Fong comes in, whether he wanted to or not. While all that's been going on, look, Matthew Marsh has chipped his way up the order into the top 12. Dan Wells still leads the way. We're 15 minutes away from the end of the race now. And Padiachi is still running nicely, but he's up to 5th in class. And Melvin Moe is 2nd. And that means that Padiachi is a point behind Moe. One more place gained. Padiachi will be a point ahead of Melvin Moe, if he can do it.
Yeah, well, basically every car ahead of Padiachi hasn't pitted yet. And some of them are relatively close to him. So I can see Padiachi quite easily inheriting a couple of more positions. Will it be the top step? It could well be. Dan Wells has managed to have a couple of laps which were quite slow in comparison, but now some better laps because presumably traffic. I think Padiachi will come in back once we get all the stops done. Padiachi may well be 2nd position. Now remember Dan Wells in our race, he didn't pit until literally the last lap. So expect him to do the same thing. I asked him why, what was the thought process behind it, and he just said rhythm. Once you're in the rhythm, you don't want to have to go in the pits and find yourself in a new part of the track to build your rhythm up again. You're in the rhythm. You don't even think about the pit stop until the very, very end.
Okay, so makes sense. And there's somebody that knows what he's doing. Darryl O'Young, by the way, 17th after having to serve a 10-second stop-go penalty earlier on in the race. So he's come back out and he's pressing hard once more. He's got the lapped Porsche behind him of Dominic Ang. And there is Adley Fong versus Antares Au. That's for 13th place. And Antares Au up the inside. Has Fong got the drive through the corner? And is that Dan Wells, the race leader, trying to squeeze between them?
Yeah, I think it is. That was a very, very sketchy move from Dan Wells. That could have ended in disaster. So, all plain sailing on the timing screens, but actually he's contending with slower traffic and having to thread the eye of the needle to go between the two of them.
So he's pushing on very, very hard indeed down to the Casio Triangle. So that means that he's now lapped up to 12th place. Now, I know it's a slightly erroneous situation given that others have made their mandatory stops, but you're only talking of a 1 second pit stop. So it does illustrate just how well Dan Wells is going out of all of this. There he is. He goes across the line, and Melvin Moe behind him now breaks the beam. 4 seconds between those two. Melvin Moe, of course, also has to get himself up through the traffic as there. Adderley Fong loses another place to Jiationg Lang, who was excluded last time out for his driving standards, but Liang up into 13th place now.
Yeah, multiple collisions for Liang, and actually he's been a relatively fast competitor when he's not been naughty, but has a similar livery to Melvin Moe, so that's slightly confusing that he's at the front of the shot and actually Melvin's at the back of the shot, both running the Motul similar liveries.
Sean Tong, 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Adderley Fong. So whether Adderley wanted to go to the pit lane or not, Sean Tong is being penalised for the contact. Another car running off the road, one of the back marking Lamborghinis there, trying to keep out of everybody's way, but trying to keep out of the way, almost getting in the way, perversely. Right, so Tong has got this 10-second penalty. It's not a stop-go or a drive-through, it's a time penalty being applied according to the data. And still that leading group yet to pit. There is the slightly bruised and battered Fong going through, one-time British Formula 3 racer, but he's made a good name for himself in GT and sports cars in Asia. Those lessons learned from racing in Europe in single-seaters a good few years ago now.
Yeah, Melvin Moe trying to get past this traffic. They're a little bit more spaced out than they were when Dan Wells encountered them, so this should be easier for him. The Porsche was very kind. What's Adderley Fong going to do? Is he going to allow him some space going into 130R? If I was Melvin Moe, I'd be backing out of that one. Yeah, just about. A bit squirrely on the brakes, but Fong's not making it quite as easy as the guys did before.
No, again, it's knowing who you're racing against, isn't it? And Adderley Fong has been involved in lots of battles, so the fact that he's got somebody else breathing down his neck doesn't instantly make him think it's one of the leading cars. So Dan Wells is getting away. It also explains, of course, why Dan had to be so committed to get through the traffic in the way that he did. Over the line goes Melvin Moe now, and he's lost a lot of time, hasn't he? 6.9 seconds. He's on his toes, he's on the attack, he's up the inside, and he goes through the traffic, gets clear of Adderley Fong with 11 minutes still to go. So the leading 5 all yet to pit. Division Padayachi still storming away, trying to bring down the gaps as best he can. And of course, those leading cars having to get through the traffic like that will have hindered them. But Padayachi is going to have to potentially get through them at some point as well.
He's 5 seconds back from Tenku Lei, and Tenku Lei is quite a long way back from Evan Chen. So I'm not sure whether he's going to catch them before they go into the pits, but Melvin Moe losing 3 seconds on that lap from just being caught up behind Adderley Fong, and it was a little bit naughty from Fong, but at the same time, I personally don't like seeing lapped cars jumping out the way in the way that they do in Formula 1. It just seems so unnecessary. But obviously Melvin Moe having to follow through those faster corners as well as slower ones did mean that he lost 3 seconds is almost double the gap to Dan Wells, so it was a big lose.
Yeah, just thinking about that, Fong has been in, so therefore Padayachi isn't going to have to think about them getting out of the way by a pit stop. They've done that. I just wonder whether actually he's so far back he won't catch them in the remaining 10 minutes. It also makes me wonder whether after their pit stops, Wells and Moe are going to fall back behind them again and have to get clear of the traffic once more. I know we're only talking of a 1 second pit stop, but you've still got the drive time. So when you add it all together, as whoops up the escape road there goes number 2, Aaron Lim. Dan Wells gets clear of him, but could they fall back into the traffic again, which is perhaps why Dan Wells wants to push on for as long as possible to try to get clear of those slower cars with only 9.5 minutes on the clock now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, with a little bit of contact there with the BMW, just as we were talking about earlier on, unpredictable what that BMW was doing. The drivers all have a heads-up display, and on that heads-up display is a leaderboard that shows you the cars in front, the cars behind. So when we say that Adderley Fong wouldn't have known he had a car behind, if he wasn't looking at his heads-up display, he wouldn't have known, but he would have seen that there was a car behind him that was 1 lap ahead, because that's actually a different coloured name to the cars that he's racing against. So he would have been had a little virtual blue flag as well. All the information would be there for him, and he would know exactly what's going on. It's amazing how much more information you're given in this virtual world than you would be in the real world.
You can learn a lot in the real world from sim racing, as we've seen, and you can understand why so much effort is being put in by the manufacturers. Now there's Padayachee, comes through and works his way over the line. He's got himself ahead of Matt Solomon now, and so as the two of them drop down towards the right-hander at turn 1, Division Padayachee a lap up there on the car behind him of Nan Lin, again sideways, but Division Padayachee then clear of Matt Solomon, who is in real terms the AM leader because he has stopped and Kevin Say has not. But Padayachee now is up into 6th overall, 5th in class. So he's on 72 points to the 73 of Melvin Moe, but he needs to gain a position in the category, and he should be able to do that before long as some of the others serve their stops.
I think Hideyoko Yatsuka has been off somewhere. I'm not quite sure why we go and switch to him otherwise. Down in 26th position, unless he's being lapped. Perhaps he's being lapped. But
yeah, graduate of the Junior Single-Seater Championship in the UK back in the early noughties, and he's got a problem, hasn't he? Because he's peeling to one side again. Evan Chen is going to go past him.
I wonder whether he's got a puncture. Not something we've seen very often, but you can pick up punctures if, number one, you wear the tyres out totally, and number two, you ride the curbs unnecessarily heavily. And the car does look like it's wiggling around a bit, so it'll be a new one. I know that it's possible, I've just never seen it happen.
It's certainly a thought, and it does tally with what the car is up to. Louis Pret getting a drive through, Evan Chen serving his mandatory stop. Now this is where it gets interesting, because he was one of those drivers ahead of Padayachee. So does Division now gain further ground in this race, courtesy of others diving for the pit road?
Yeah, I'm still convinced Padayachee's going to be way ahead of that lot when it all shakes out. But we'll have to wait and see as Kevin C starts his next lap in 3rd position. So actually that's quite interesting. That means there's Padayachee on the road coming up to the end of the lap. Yeah,
he's right there, and he's going to gain one place at the expense of Chen, who is there, look, leaving the pit lane. That felt like a long stop for Evan Chen.
Let's have a look when he comes back out onto circuit.
It might be, of course, because it's quite a long pit lane. So, as I say, it's a 1 second pit stop, but it's the drive time that really hits you. So there is Padayachee, 5th now, which is really 4th within the class, for which he will get 74 points. So right now, he is ahead of Melvin Moe, isn't he? He's gained that place to go ahead on points.
Yeah, it was all looking so bad for him at the start of the race, wasn't it? But that decision to split the strategy over what Melvin Moe was doing and get himself on a different part of the circuit. Incredible how, by simply moving your car to a different part of the track where you encounter traffic at different times, he has been able to build such an advantage over his competitors that looked like such a deficit at the start.
So the race leader, Dan Wells, way clear of Melvin Moe now, 7.8 seconds the margin, which is really bad news for Melvin Moe. And in fact, actually, there are 2 big bits of bad news for Melvin with 5 minutes to go. One is you're not going to catch Dan Wells and take points away from him and boost your score. And the other is you're being outscored all of a sudden by Division Padayachee, who is now ahead in the championship once again.
And you've got your teammate ahead of you who has a bit of a reputation for being slightly naughty often.
Yeah, as Kevin Say down the pit lane. Now this is significant to see what pans out within the AM battle. So Kevin Say should, I would have thought, fall behind Matt Solomon now, but stay ahead of Billy Lowe. Division Padayachee is going to gain another place on the track. It doesn't matter for points, but it does get him closer, of course, to the pointy end of the race order. So here is Padayachee up through the final curve, heading towards the timing line, just under the lights there. And you see how close he is to the BMW, and that car's got to make a pit stop anyway. So Padayachee is an absolute shoe-in now to gain another position before much longer.
Yeah, how far ahead is Melvin Moe to the BMW? I think he is a long way ahead. Otherwise, Padayachee's effectively nearly taken a whole pit stop out of Melvin Moe in his stint, which would be incredible. There's a minute difference between Melvin Moe and Tenku Lei. So actually, a minute difference. The pit stops are taking 40, 50 seconds. It could be close. Paddy actually may not be jumping Melvin Moe here.
Right, well, this is Paddy then. But even as he stands, he's going to be ahead on points. Melvin Moe presses on, but really he needs Dan Wells to have a problem and stop or get a penalty or something to give him a lifeline. Melvin Moe for the pit lane now with 3 minutes and change on the clock. Down the pit road he comes, so it was always going to be a fight for him with a 7-point deficit to Paddy. And now let's see where Paddy is going to be at the end of this pit stop, because he's a long way back on the racetrack. And he's heading towards the end of the lap, whereas Melvin Moe is still driving to the pit box. So Paddy at full race pace, whereas Melvin Moe crawls down the pit lane and now, of course, has to stop.
I think it's still advantage Melvin Moe. He's at the end of pit lane because he qualified at the head of the field. Sits there, yeah, that's about right. Maybe a little bit of fuel he took on. He's got a huge advantage. So I was confused by the fact there was such a big gap between Melvin Moe and Tenku Lei, but Moe definitely still in second position, well ahead of Paddy, but it's still not enough for the championship.
Absolutely, yeah, he's ahead on the track, but he's not ahead on points, which is the real key in all of this. So the only hope he's got now is that Dan Wells has some kind of problem. Dan has yet to pit. We've got probably one more lap to go at the end of this, depending on where Dan is on the racetrack. And looking down from the high shot there, Melvin Moe has got more traffic up the road ahead of him. So Division Paddy is on target now to go certainly third, if not better, before the very end. I think third is as good as it's going to get. So third would give him 77 points. Melvin Moe's second would be 73. Division Paddy, after a pretty stressful hour, is on target to win the title as another errant back marker goes to the beach, gets back onto the racetrack, thankfully not getting in the way of Melvin Moe.
No, absolutely, but Melvin's got plenty of traffic to contend with here still. Got plenty of cars to try and clear and a few kind of dangers for him. And those dangers still lie for Paddy around the circuit as well, and for Dan Wells, who now comes to the pits. That will be with basically on the last lap again.
It will, won't it? Yeah. So when he rejoins, he'll start the last lap of the race. So in he comes. I can't see Melvin Moe getting ahead of him on the stops. So this has got to be absolutely inch perfect for Dan Wells. No dramas on exit. So in comes the Lippert Lamborghini. Melvin Moe presses on, but Dan Wells, it's a great drive and it's great to see Dan do this. It just leaves that taste in your mouth thinking, wish I'd seen him in every round of the championship, because he could have been a major factor, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. He should have been a major factor. A bit like his teammate, Lamborghini teammate in the European Series, whose name, Dennis Lind, who is an amazing sim driver and entered the first round, then didn't appear after that. It would have been great to have Dennis in the European Series. And slightly frustrating that Dan had this appointment in Europe that meant he couldn't do the full season for this series. But Melvin Moe stays in second position. Dan Wells stays ahead of him, and only Tenku Lei has not pitted. Now he comes into the pits with just 22 seconds remaining.
Okay, so he gets that stop through. So Division Paddy will inherit third place and secure the championship. Dan Wells is going to be the race leader and the race winner. And if he were to not win, Melvin Moe would take a second victory. Division Paddy would move up into second place. They'd tie on points, and you'd have to go down to an 11th score to determine who is going to be the champion on the tie-break. So let's not worry about that, because Dan Wells, I think, is pretty much home and dry. And Division Paddy is on target for a championship. He won the first 2 races. We are going to have our 4th different race winner out of 5. But Division Paddy has driven very impressively indeed. And of course, but for that internet connection problem that he had in the last round of the championship, who knows what the situation could have been coming into this round. As it is, though, he has been attacked early on by Jasper Tong. He's made the best of it. He had an early pit stop, regrouped, and he's on target to win the GT World Asia Esports Championship for the real drivers in that pro class. And bear in mind as well that Kevin Say is staying ahead of Billy Lowe. He's going to win the AMS. But Dan Wells is on target then to score a race win. Into the Casio triangle then, sets the car up for the right and the left, and ready now to accelerate up towards the timing line. The checkered flag is going to be at the ready, and for Dan Wells, it is honours in the final round of the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship presented by Tarmac Works. Dan Wells wins the race. Melvin Moe so near and yet so far. And Division Padiachi, there he is, on target then for third position, but he's going to win the championship. Matt Solomon is going to be an AM class winner in the race for the first time this year, so a third different AM winner. But here's the champion. He's on his way to the line. He's on his way to the flag. He's on his way to the glory. Division Padiachi is going to be the pro champion here at Suzuka. Comes across the line. There's the flag. Division Padiachi third in the race. That is enough to secure the pro championship at the end of a great season. Spoiled slightly by being nerfed by the traffic at the very end, but Division Padiachi takes the crown, and Division Padiachi is, for the Mercedes squad, a victor. Matt Solomon fourth, the winning AM. Kevin Say fifth and the AM champion, but Dan Wells has driven superbly. So Dan Wells, our race winner. Congratulations to our champions in AM, Kevin Say, and in Pro Division Padiachi at the end of not only another fascinating race, but a mega season of esports racing.
Has been so entertaining.
What an exceptional final race for the TCL GT World Challenge Asia Esports, presented by Tarmac Works and Ben Constanduros. Two very deserving new champions have been crowned.
I just hope that in terms of this championship, in terms of the real world drivers, they've enjoyed it. This has been effectively a replacement for their real world racing, and it's been incredibly entertaining for us to watch the way that they've developed as well as drivers. But ultimately, I hope that it's given them something as drivers to really kind of as a memory and something to focus on and something to enjoy over the last couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely. And Division Padiachi, again, he started the year absolutely dominant. We thought it was going to be pretty much a walk-away championship for him. And then they had the internet connection issues last time round. This race turned into a bit of a meal as well. And it kept the excitement going, didn't it? All the way through to the end.
Well, that's motorsport for you. That's exactly what happened. Expect the unexpected. And I actually never felt that he was the fastest man at the early part of the season. He was just very consistent and was able to pick up the points. But as the fast guys were able to actually be consistent as well and not throw it off after 3 laps, we saw him having a great challenge from the likes of Melvin Moe. And then Dan Wells at the end. What a shame not to see him in the full championship. It would have been great. And Aaron Borg, shame to miss him from today's racing. But they were all equal on pace and really just fantastic to see.
Yep, everybody's a champion today, and congratulations to all of our real world pro and AM drivers. Division Padiachi for taking the Pro Championship, and Kevin C for taking the AM category as well. While we're doing thank yous, Ben, I want to offer our thanks to our title sponsor, TCL, to Tarmac Works, to AK Informatica that run this championship, to Kuno Simulazione, of course, that make Assetto Corsa Competizione, to CBR Media, all the sponsors that have valued so much throughout this programme, to SRO that run the championship as well, and to yourself, Ben Constanduros and David Addison, for putting on a fantastic broadcast as well. It's been a pleasure to work alongside the both of you, Ben.
Yeah, it's been really cool, and it's always amazing to have the likes of David, real world commentator across so many series, including, of course, all of the SRO, the lead commentator for the Spa 24 Hours, and to have him lend his voice and his presence and his professionalism to a championship like this. I'm just a sim guy, but he's the real deal.
Fantastic. Yes, David, thank you very much as well. Final thoughts on the championship now it's come to an end?
Paul, you have to say, in a way, that it's a shame that we couldn't have a real world championship, of course, but take the positives from that. You touched on them yourselves, but what that has done is to give everybody an opportunity to see, first of all, esports racing and exactly what it's all about. It has given real world drivers a taste of what esports racing is all about, and it's given us all a chance to see a whole different region of sim racers out of the sim championship, the likes of Andika Maulana doing so well, and it's made everybody aware of the ability of sim racers. A bit like Ben and I touched on in the European Championship at the start of the year in the first lockdown, people have had their eyes opened to what sim racing is all about. And it's not the poor relation of motorsport. It's a branch of motorsport that can stand on its own 2 feet, and it deserves the recognition, which it wouldn't have had we not had the year that we have had. So the positives are that it's put esports racing on the map. It's been a delight to be part of it, to be involved in this. It's not just an old dog taught a new trick, it's an old dinosaur taught a new trick, but it's been great to call it, great racing, and I don't necessarily want any more pandemics, but I am looking forward to more esports racing in 2021.
Fantastic. Really well put, David. Thank you. And talking about 2021, for all you folks watching at home, don't forget that the GT World Challenge Europe SRO Esports Championship will be back next year. So stay tuned in the coming weeks and months for some announcements on that one. And as for our race winners and championship winners from today, stay tuned to social media where we will be interviewing them and getting their thoughts and comments about what has been, I must say myself, an exceptional series of racing. But all good things come to an end, and from Ben Constanduros, from David Addison, and from myself, Paul Jeffrey, thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will be back.